The Eiffel Tower, hello everybody and welcome. Phil Liggett and Paul Sherwen back in the saddle for another year with World Cycling Productions, and we begin our season with the 62nd Paris-Nice cycle race, a race of some 1,300 kilometres, beginning this year on the outskirts of Paris, in fact, in the town of Chaville, with a time trial, and unusually this will be the only time trial of the event this time.
Very difficult route, as always, for Paris-Nice. After the first individual time trial, the riders skirt right down the centre of France to Rouen. But it's really in the last 3 days of racing that the race starts to get that little bit more difficult, with hilly stages into Gap, Cannes and finishing in Nice.
And for the 20 teams of 8 rides, 160 in all, it's time trial formation right from the off, with a 13.2 kilometre time trial in the undulations here, and it could prove a decisive move for some. Let's join the action as we look at the situation at the moment with David Rebellin, having done the best time until now, 17 minutes and 23 seconds for the near 8-mile course.
David Rebellin going off very early in the course this afternoon, but out on the course now, a lot of riders starting to have a few difficulties with the terrain, because the race starts with a rather difficult climb just outside of Chaville and finishes right on the outskirts of Paris in Vannes. You can see here the time coming up to beat is still that of David Rebellin, 17 minutes 23 seconds, and Floyd Landis, a very good individual time trialist with already a win under his belt this year in the Tour of the Algarve, I think Phil's setting himself up as another pre-race favourite.
Well, he's going to be pretty pleased with this one, getting US Postal off to a great start. He's up amongst the top 10 at the moment. He comes over 8th best time, falling a little short towards the end, but he's still got a week ahead of him. Big cheers at the start line now for the departure here. He's still a popular Frenchman, isn't he? Richard Virenque.
Well, Virenque will not really enjoy this course. It's a very long individual time trial for the start of the year, 13.2 kilometres, and it starts with a very difficult uphill climb to the top of the Pavé de Meudon, which is just in the outskirts of Paris. This is Jens Voigt, a new team for Voigt now. This is going to be a very close time. He's posted some very rapid times out on the course.
It's close. It's very close to Rebellin, this. We expected a good ride from Jens. He's a powerful time trialist. He's full of confidence this year, moving across to Bjorn Riis's CSC team. Slipping a bit behind the rather surprising ride, I think, of David Rebellin. And he's still hanging on to a top 3, but he's going to slip away perhaps a little bit further. Voigt coming in 4th place at the moment. Still holding on to that, hits the line, 17:41. 4th place, not quite what Jens would have thought, I would have thought.
I think a bit of a problem for many of the late starters, because although it was raining at the start of the day, it dried off for the middle riders who started this afternoon's time trial. But it looks to me, Phil, as if we're going to get another spot of rain in the latter part of the afternoon. We didn't see David Rebellin start, but these are pictures from earlier in the day, and he posted the fastest time at half distance. He's a man who's always promised to be a very good individual time trialist, and of course a man who could possibly win this race, having finished in 3rd place overall last year.
Well, David Rebellin, a surprising rider. He's over 32 years of age now. This is Grisha Nierman coming in, and again a man that's been coached by Heiko Salzwiedel, the former German coach of the Australian Cycling Federation. He said, watch out for Grisha Nierman this year. Well, Nierman's doing quite a good ride. It's going to be a top 4 finish at the moment. Big effort, a Rabobank rider, and hits the line. He holds now 4th place, 17:41. Just about 18 seconds slower there than David Rebellin. Here's the man who is probably going to retire at the end of this year, Alex Zülle, and he's producing a very special time trial. He won this race back in 1993. 11 years, I can't believe it.
Unbelievable. He's still got a good turn of speed. This man started his life off as a specialist in prologues, and he's actually going to push David Rebellin quite close. It won't be the best time for Alex Zülle, but I think it's an indication that Team Phonak are being very serious about this event. And although he comes up to the line outside the time of David Rebellin, you can see him just stopping the clock there at 17:33, 3rd best time for him. It is good to see that Tyler Hamilton will be starting Paris-Nice, but Phil, I don't think he's got the form that he had at this time last year, because he in fact had a bronchial problem in the last couple of days.
Well, he has said this, a new team of course for Tyler, tempted away from the side of Bjorn Riis over the winter for the bigger money perhaps of Phonak, a Swiss team. He said he probably worked. This is Van den Broek, and it looks as though, just looking at Van den Broek here, he's turning in something special here. Now, we never quite know what to expect from Frank Van den Broek. The Belgian rider who has got himself on Fassa Bortolo and looks as though he's in good shape, looking at the shape of his body, Paul. And this is a good ride from Van den Broek. He's slipping away a little bit now. The other man we never saw ride, in fact, who came in with a great time, is the American Bobby Julich, also having changed teams over the winter and saying to be full of confidence. And he's certainly got one over there on Van den Broek. 7th on the line at the moment.
It's like Laurent Brochard now, just going over the top of the climb, the Pavé de Meudon. A very difficult climb. It's out on the way towards Versailles. Once they've gone over the summit of that climb, the riders then plunge into the outskirts of Paris. They're not too far away from the Seine on the finishing line. As we go back to the finishing line again to see Richard Virenque. Well, not surprisingly, what a great time by Richard Virenque. A long way down outside of the 17:23 set by David Rebellin.
Yes, just about scrapes into the top 120 with that ride. Now look at the face of George Hincapie here. This isn't a bad ride for George. He looks over his shoulder. The clock stops. It still counts here. Oh, a clock failed to stop, but I think it's settled somewhere around the top 25 there. Chance for the world champion, the new world champion here, David Miller, and his first attempt now to ride for a win in the rainbow jersey.
David Miller too, I think, is starting the season off quite slowly. He wants to try and keep his form for later in the year as we go down to the finish line. Tyler Hamilton, not bad for a man who wasn't going to start Paris-Nice 48 hours ago. 23rd place for him, 17 minutes 57 seconds. But I think Tyler's goals, Phil, are just a little bit further down the road.
Well, the big surprise to me is David Rebellin hanging on to that #1 slot. Laurent Brochard, winner of the Criterium International last year, can produce a good time trial when it counts. That's special. 7th place, 17:41 for Laurent Brochard. He'll start on the road stages tomorrow in a high position. Back with the world champion, David Miller. We don't think he's got the winning form, but you can never tell with David. This is a very much a specialist course here. It's calling for a lot of skill on these corners. The sun is shining once more for the world champion. First time we've seen him in his all-white strip with the rainbow jersey on. It looks pretty splendid, I must say, as Miller now comes up towards the line. 17:15 and counting. It's going to be close. This is going to be a world champion ride for David Miller. He can't get to the line in the time of David Rebellin, but he's going to be right up amongst it with a fine effort. I would think probably something to do with the proudness of being world champion this ride rather than the great form. He hits the line, 17:32, second for the world champ.
Well, I think it was a question of pride there, Phil. We're looking down here on Jörg Yats. He's put a couple of very good times in the early part of the season. In fact, he's the winner this year of the Tour of the Mediterranean. I think the whole team have come to Paris-Nice with some serious ambitions.
Well, the German riders always promised strength. He would have had a wonderful finish in the Tour de France last year, but he hadn't had to wait for his fallen leader, Jashiba Bolocki, down the road to Gap. Here it is, Jörg Yatski now coming in. And this looks like he's got the time in hand here to become the new leader. I have to say this is going to be a big surprise if Jörg Yatski does land the #1 position, but he has for the moment. 17:19.8, new best time, and we've waited a long time for that. Eric Decker on the arrival now.
Look at this.
And another time.
Inside of 17 minutes, going around the corner there, he really is going to push it hard. This man, Phil, is on the big comeback trail. Eric Decker broke his leg 2 years ago in Milan-San Remo, and he's never really got back to the form, but I think today he's announcing his return to the top.
Decker of Rabobank, he broke his leg a year ago now, and it's taken him a while to come back, but it looks as though he's producing a very, very good time trial. He's just slipped behind Yaxka, but he's got ahead of Rebellin. 3rd place, no, he's just gone behind Rebellin there. 3rd place for Decker.
Well, this man, I don't think expects to win the individual prologue. Time trial this afternoon, 13.2 kilometres. Alexander Vinokourov is certainly not one of the best individual time trialists in the sport, but he has to lay the foundations here, Phil, of a very good ride if he wants to win this event for the 3rd year in a row.
Well, last year, of course, it was rather tragic circumstances taking the victory for Alexander Vinokourov, because on the road to Nice, he lost his best friend in Kivilev, who was killed. And he wanted to win so much last year for him, which he did, and that was his 2nd win. Now, has he got the form to make it 3 in a row? People tend to have repeat victories in Paris-Nice. History will predict that. Vinokourov, though, off to a steady start, shall we say here. But, you know, we're only talking seconds, and there's a long way down to Nice yet. 16th place, 17:45.49 for him. No doubt about the winner, and a rare yellow jersey for Jörg Yatski In fact, I think it's the first yellow jersey he's ever worn.
Absolutely superb ride by Jorgic there, Phil, and I think that sets down the gauntlet for everybody else to challenge. David Rebellin, I think, though, is a serious challenger, just 4 seconds off, and a great ride by Eric Decker to get 3rd place.
So in the winter we worked quite hard on the time trial bike, on the time trial position, and we did a lot of special training. So yeah, I wanted to do good here in Paris-Nice, but I didn't expect to win. It was very technical, very tricky, and also hard because it was not totally flat, so you had to change a lot your rhythm, and yeah, it was quite a hard time trial.
Jorgic there, who won the time trial of the Tour of the Mediterranean just a couple of weeks ago, obviously holding on to good form. Now let's see what happens here. As we get off now on the 166.5 kilometre ride from Chaville to Montargis, town that's often featured on the Paris-Nice route. We leave the valley of the Chevreuse, and then it's a gentle undulation down to the finishing line in Montargis. And we'll just have a look at the highlights of this stage, in fact, because it's been quite a decisive day, which nobody expected. We expected this to be a day for the sprinters, but as we now enter the final 2 kilometres, some 30 riders only surviving. Big notables, Paul missing the move, Leipheimer, Vinokourov, last year's winner, Tyler Hamilton quite a way behind.
Well, Tyler Hamilton, not surprisingly, caught out by the big acceleration coming from CSC in the crosswinds. It was obviously a pre-decided plan by them to try and get rid of as many of the big race favourites as possible on the first day, and it was all because of the big crosswinds that came around about 40 kilometres to go. You can just see Jorgic in the middle of the main field there in his yellow jersey, looking very confident, surrounded completely by his team. Bobby Julich has managed to get into this group as well, and of course the man doing the majority of the pacemaking on the front is Jens Voigt.
Well, this has been a bit of a triumph today for the team tactics of Bjarne Riis's squad, CSC. And Bobby Julich himself is feeling very, very confident. He had a great time trial, a little glimpse from the past, I think, for Bobby. Let's hope he has a good year now.
Well, a few big names did make the split here, Phil. Frank Vandenbroek is in the group, as well as David Rebellin, the man who finished second yesterday. Michael Rogers, a man to look out for as well, because I think he's a possible candidate to win Paris-Nice this afternoon after a fairly reasonable individual time trial yesterday.
It's the Australian, Michael Rogers, had a fabulous season last year, and he got the vote as the best improved rider in Australia. And now the sprint is warming up here, and this is going to be an interesting finish, I think, because we normally expect the whole field to come down to this finish. Just as well, perhaps they're not today, because the approach is rather narrow.
Torsten Heitmann was the man on the front there for T-Mobile. That was a very good move around this corner for him, and this is there where you don't want to be. Heitmann, in fact, at the front has got a slight gap over the rest of the field.
Well, Heitmann so often finds himself isolated on his T-Mobile team, because the man who's jumped around him looks like Pedro Jarillo, who got married and spent his honeymoon in South Africa, and those sunshine miles over there have done him a great deal of good luck here, because he's going to hold this off, I think. That's hardly a sprinting style, I have to say. He's still sitting on the tops of the handlebars, but he is going clear here as the field behind are trying to get round a lot of... Oh, and somebody pulled the foot out there, and Pedro Jarillo gets the stage, and I think that was Thor Hushoff, who has come over with both his feet off the pedals.
I think what happened there was, in fact, he touched one of the barriers at the side of the road as he was trying to come up through the inside, but it didn't affect the overall stage win there at all, because Pedro Jarillo was never going to get caught by anyone.
It might be a little while, a good minute at least, before anybody else arrives at the finish. There is Pedro's first big victory of the year for Quick-Step David Tamon. I've never seen a sprinting style like that with his hands in the centre of the handlebars, but it would prove to be very effective today. I don't think the fact that Hushoff had made a real mess of that sprint affected the result at all. And that's the first win for him, and the 5th in his career, which began back in 1998.
I think this is the big story of the day, though, because look at this, the time that has been lost by riders like Alexander Vinokourov, Alex Zülle, and of course Levi Leipheimer, almost 5 minutes as the main field comes charging up towards the line. And I think for Alexander Vinokourov, he's certainly not going to win Paris-Nice this year.
You'll notice a lot of teams have changed their colour design this year. That's the new colours for the Alessio squad on the front just now. And we've got the new team on the block, which used to be Ibn Esther, which is now the Balearic Islands, or the Ile de Balear. They're also in with largely white jerseys on. But there's the clock counting down. An awful lot of time lost today, some 5¼ minutes. That really is the end of the tour for those boys, I have to say. So on day one, well day two, but day one of the open highway, if you like, it's made quite a difference to the overall. Rio gets the win, same time as the principal players from the time trial yesterday, and that means that Jörg Jatzky and his CSC team have had a wonderful day out when they expected just to be following their leader towards the finishing line. But Pedro Rio is the top of the leaderboard there.
Not a bad bike rider. He seems to get a win every year that he's been a professional, and I think this will have to be one of his best. But the big change at the top of the overall classification, Phil, although Jörg Jatz is still leading, is Bobby Julich moving up into 3rd place and Frank Vandenbroek up into 4th.
Top 10 completed there by Fabian Cancellara. And Jörg Jatzky will go back to the hotel tonight feeling very, very confident with the day's work. They really did shake that race out today, and a lot of riders that were not expecting it. We now go on to stage number 3. This will take us, this is the longest stage of the race at 229 kilometres. We now head from La Chapelle Saint-Ursin to Rouen.
Long stage, as you can see in the early part, it's reasonably flat, but the difficulty comes right at the end there with those 2 3rd category climbs, and the last one is the Côte de Châtel-Montagne.
And the breakaway of the day here, this is now Leon Van Bon who started the move, and I think it's Ziegler with him there on Gerolsteiner.
Well, these guys jumped away with 31 kilometres of the race covered, and they built themselves up a maximum advantage of 13 minutes. But this is what Paris-Nice is all about. As they head into this very difficult hilly area towards the end of the stage, they're getting a chance to see the snow for the first time, and that doesn't bode well for the next few days.
No, it doesn't, because in fact the weather, we always see snow somewhere in Paris, but they're very worried about the weather in the region at the moment. The winter is malingering. 2 kilometres inside to go. Here comes the peloton trying to line up behind. I don't think they're going to catch those two now.
I'm pretty surprised that these two riders have managed to survive, because at 30 kilometres to go they only had 2 minutes of their advantage left, and they really seem to have picked it up over the last few kilometres, but it's really going to be quite a tricky sprint here. I'd have to give the advantage to Leon Van Bon, but I don't know all that much about Thomas Ziegler. He's a young rider from Gerolsteiner, but you know, when you come up to a sprint at the end of a long breakaway like this, it can actually go any which way you want.
There's Leon Van Bon. He doesn't win a great deal of races since he turned pro back in '94. He's won, in fact, 28 of them. But I have to say, he does choose his victories well, and he's got himself in with a real chance of a win here. The peloton are coming back. That gap now down to 50 seconds. They can't possibly close it right now, unless, of course, these two start messing about, which is a possibility, because they both want to win.
They both want to win, but I think the cold, calm, collected Leon Van Bon is going to try and force Thomas Ziegler to stay at the front. Now, that will be a sweet sign for those guys. There's the red kite, indicating just 1,000 metres left to go on this stage. And having built up a maximum of 13 minutes at one stage, it's consistently come down the time gap all of the time over the last few kilometres. And actually, with 10 kilometres to go, they still only had 1 minute and 10 seconds. I was actually convinced that these two men were going to get caught, but they will have a chance now to sprint it out for victory.
The thing is, at this time of the year, one is not sure about the form of the riders, who is riding for a little bit of training and who is riding with a little bit of form. Ziegler here knows he's been outmanoeuvred, I think. Leon Van Bon is going to gamble now. That's a long straight, which means that the peloton, who are closing in, will see these two riders. They're getting a bit twitchy. They know how long can they afford to slow before they make the move for the line. Leon Van Bon, who has got some great results in his life on the stage of the Tour de France a few years ago, he knows that what is required now.
I think one of the reasons these two men have managed to survive, Phil, is because Robbie McEwen, the big sprinter from Lotto Doma, was actually dropped on that final climb of the day. So I think he's actually trying to force Ziegler to open up the sprint first here.
Well, that'll be a good result for Lotto if they still get the win, despite the loss of Robbie. Ziegler here is now deciding he's no choice but to lead it out. He's trying to gauge the sprint to the line. Van Bon, though, is making it look rather easily. He's straight over the top of him. Leon Van Bon gets a win for Lotto here. Now, maybe a little bit premature, or am I? Because there's a late challenge from Ziegler. Van Bon looks as though, he's just got it on the line. For a moment there, Paul, I really thought he made a big mistake.
If we look at the front end of the main field right now, we've got Fassa Bortolo on the front. They're trying to lead out Frank Vandenbroek, but that's Robbie Hunter on the right-hand side, opening up the charge for Rabobank. Well, coming up now, up through the middle as well, Tom Boonen as well. That's Tom Boonen. He's going to be very upset with this, Phil, because look at the time gap. Not very much at all. Boonen in the middle there in the blue and grey jersey of Quickstep, and Robbie McEwen is nowhere to be seen in this sprint. He was dropped on the final climb. That's not really a very good day for Lotto Domo.
Oh, but another good day out for the Quickstep de Vitamon boys there. Having got a good result yesterday, now they've got Tom Boonen, the future stars. They would like to see him getting a good third place rather, because there were 2 riders away. Very strange Paris-Nice already this. The time trial yesterday, we have some big favourites miss out when they should have been a day for the sprinters. Today, another day for the sprinters. A breakaway of 2 has survived. All being all, it should make no difference to the overall classification, because the principal heads were right in that chasing group, and Leon van Bon didn't do a great time trial, but he's happy with his win.
I think he was a bit surprised with the comeback there of Thomas Ziegler as well. He did get the win. He is an experienced bike rider, but it just goes to show at the end of a long breakaway like that, you have to be so careful in a 2-man sprint.
There's the result, same time for Thomas Ziegler of Gerolsteiner. 25 seconds was all that was left of their lead in the end for Tom Boonen. Robbie Hunter of South Africa also getting in the frame there, winner of the Tour of Qatar not so long ago. Jens Voigt topping out there with a good sprint to match his time trial.
More than 200 kilometers, then you hope you can make it till the end. And I was standing on 7 minutes on the overall, and so was my co-assistant today, and it was a big chance.
Overall, though, Jorgiatski keeps his lead, 6 seconds. That's all he's got over Rebellin, 18 on Bobby Julich, but that's his teammate, 22 on the dangerous Van den Broeke. But end of day 3, and still the same man in the yellow jersey, which I suspect we expected here, because the hills on this race are lying ahead, but not on stage number 4, because the snow has continued and the organisation is having to take the decision to stop the stage from Roanne to Le Puy-en-Velay, and it would have been the 4th day, Paul.
It would have been a very difficult stage for the riders, because I think organisation had to make the right decision to cancel the stage, and this is a route that they would have faced if it hadn't been for this. The unbelievable snow coming down. It takes me back to 1990, Phil, when 1980, I should say, when it snowed on every individual stage of Paris-Nice, and the man who won the race at the end of the day was a very tough man by the name of Gilbert Duclos-Lassalle.
Well, the last time I commentated on a stage cancelled by snow, or at least almost cancelled, it was when Bjarne Riis won the Tour de France, and up in the Alps we had to cancel one of the stages there, at least the morning section of the route. The race goes on though, as we now move on and make our way to Rasteau. And the riders are okay today, 215 kilometres from Le Puy-en-Velay and down to Rasteau as we leave the area of the snow. At least the organisation is hoping so.
I'll tell you what, at the front end of the main field, this has always been a big domination by CSC. You can see there, Phil, as soon as they get to the crosswinds, it's as if they know exactly what to do. They've trained in this formation throughout the winter months, and right now they've really turned the hammer down, and they're putting the peloton into some serious difficulty.
Now, the winds here also playing their part today, and the sun is shining. It's not particularly warm, though.
Well, this is a hotspot sprint here, and there's time bonuses on the line. They're just coming up. Rebellin came up the outside there, and I think he just got across the line ahead of Jens Voigt. And in 3rd position, I think just holding on there was, in fact, Jorgiatski. So this is a good move. This is a move, too, by Alexander Vinokourov. He's, in fact, in this leading group of 10 riders, but he's the man who's the furthest down in the overall classification, losing 5 minutes and 15 seconds on stage 2.
Well, CSC at the moment can't go wrong in this race by the look of it just now. As we now start the counter moves here, we haven't seen too much of Alexander Vinokourov. His time trial was nothing to write home about, and he lost time on day 2.
I'll tell you one man who has made the split here just behind Alexander Vinokourov is George Hincapie, and that's a good move for him. They're only around about 15 seconds in arrears behind Alexander Vinokourov, but Braden Cook is in the group just behind. The CSC, though, Phil, have got the major domination in this group, and you can just see there Alexander Vinokourov. Michele Bartoli's in this group, Jorgiatski, Jens Voigt, and Bobby Julich, who's riding an absolutely sterling start to this season.
Well, this is a big effort by Alexander. He's probably feeling now he's not going to be a marked man, even though he is the defending champion of last year and the winner the year before that. You can tell by the fact he's wearing gloves and arm warmers just how chilly though it is out there. That's a rather wintry sun here as we continue in our southeasterly direction towards Nice. Nice thing about Paris-Nice is, Paul, once you get down there and you see the yellow mimosa flowers and you feel a little bit of heat in the air, that's lovely.
There's a long way to go though, and just round the corner there was a scuttering little movement there by Alexander Vinokurov, just hoping to survive. But you know, he's probably being pushed on quite a lot today, Phil. It's the 11th of March and tomorrow is the anniversary of Andrei Kivelev's death. That happened on the roads of Paris-Nice last year, and I'm sure that Alexander Vinokurov wants to try and get the win today, but 6 seconds is really not very much.
Well, it's nothing at all. It rather reminds me of the stage down into Gap in the Tour de France when he was being chased, of course, by Bolocki, Ulrich and Lance Armstrong. But then we had the accident to Bolocki and he got the stage win. But Alexander right now will feel anything but safe here, but this is a determined show by him. He's developed into being a great racing cyclist. Third in the Tour de France. He's being chased by the men who so far have shaped this year's race, though.
CSC, it's all been about CSC since we came out onto the open roads here of Paris-Nice. They really need to take control of the front end of this group if they want to pull back Alexander Vinokurov, but maybe they're not quite confident of the sprinting ability of Jörg Yachts, because David Rebellin in this group would be looking for a 10-second time bonus, and that could be very important if it all comes back together, because for the moment out on the road, it's advantage David Rebellin in second position there.
Right there, tucked in nicely too, is Big George Hincapie. These really are the boys that came out good in the time trial. They've got themselves all together in the chase, and clearly the peloton could do nothing about it when they issued the counter-attack and the race split up under the pressure. The helicopter behind is over that chase group. There they are, and that looks like the kilometre sign to me as we go underneath. He's keeping all of his lead here. These riders are preoccupied by the fight for second place, I think.
They're really looking over their shoulders. Jens Voigt came to the front there. If he wants to pull this all back together, he's really going to have to do something quite special. I think Alexander Vinokurov has got just enough advantage now to stay away for the victory this afternoon. It's 7 seconds, but it's a very difficult drag up to the line.
Well, the counter-attacks have started here now. That looks like Yatsk himself is seeing if anybody's coming out to play as they get into the last 500 metres.
Fourth position there, just moving up in the white jersey. That's Baden Cook. He'll be looking for the win. He'll be just holding back. He's had a very good start to the season. He's on the wheel there of the man in the green jersey. That is Jens Voigt. But they all have got to try and catch this man if they want to get the victory this afternoon. But Phil, he doesn't look like a man who's going to weaken.
He does not. In fact, he's full of determination. I think he's rather fortunate that this is an uphill finish here, because it's a strong man's finish and the boys behind are taking too much notice of one another into the last 300 metres. This is a win for Alexander Vinokurov. If you can't win Paris-Nice, you can still win stages. Quite clearly, that's his attitude today.
That's his attitude, but look how much he's really pushing into this advantage here. He's really trying to survive. Cookie's on the front. He's not going to win the sprint. They're going to sweep by him, that's for certain. He came to the front much too far out from the finish, but no one's going to take the glory away from Alexander Vinokurov this afternoon.
He looks over his shoulder. Almost a year to the day he lost his friend Andrei Kivelov. He wins the stage here. The race for second place. It looked like Yaks may have taken that on the line.
I think as well, Michele Bartoli got across the line in third place. Now that is going to be very important. They had to get across the line ahead of David Rebellin. Now this is a group containing Frank Vandenbroeke. So a lot of riders, in fact, lost a bit of time out on the course this afternoon. Vandenbroeke are going to move down the overall classification tonight.
Well, I wouldn't have tipped Jörg Yatska to lead the race all the way to Nice, but just now I'm beginning to feel he's scored another great day here. He's put one or two of his close rivals back into that second group. Things couldn't be working out better for him just now. He is nosing clear in the overall classification.
Once again, you can see the damage that was done out on the open road by the wind and the fact that CSC are really a very dominant team here. This is Pedro Horia. Well, he's sprinting up for a lesser placing here after getting himself the win a couple of days ago.
And he's just going to be on the minute behind as he hits the line. 58 seconds the time gap as the field continues to come in, but yet another strange day in Paris-Nice. The field has split up. You wouldn't have thought, though, that we lost yesterday's stage because of snow, would you? Because there's no sign of it now as we're moving further down towards the south.
Well, I tell you one thing, CSC are riding this race to tactical perfection, but the man who was able to outwit them this afternoon was Alexander Vinokourov. And I have to say, in the back of my mind, Phil, I don't think they were chasing him flat out, because he's a long way down in the overall classification. No threat at all. He took advantage of the infighting between the yellow jersey there, Jorg Yat, and of course David Rebellin, who I think they're just a little bit worried about his finishing sprint.
First win of the year here for Vinokourov. He won 11 races last year, which included the Amstel Gold World Cup and the stage of the Tour de France. But it's always nice to get back on the winning trail. The interesting point was, look at this attack here that came from Jorg Yatska and Jens Voigt in the green jersey. CSC having a great day.
But this is a very good move here by Michele Bartoli. Just watch David Rebellin coming up there. He's trying to get himself a time bonus. There's still time bonuses for second and third. And that lunge for the line from El Cato on the right-hand side just gave him third position. Very good tactical move. This team is very solid here this afternoon.
Second and third for CSC. They cannot go wrong. Just 4 seconds for the group behind the winner today. And Baden Cook, the sprinter, last of the group. Bobby Julich and George Hincapie there, though. And they'll be delighted with that. Alan Davis also riding well, as you can see, completing the top 10. He's an Australian. But here's the stage winner. Win number 1 of the year for Alexander Vinokourov. He's now just over 30 years of age. Overall, though, changes. 10 seconds to Rebellin, and look further down. Frank van den Broek is on the descent here, almost a minute back now. Michele Bartoli still in there. George Hincapie very much so. And Bobby Julich enjoying life on the new CSC team, who one has to say are dominating that overall classification just now.
Interesting name in 10th position there as well. Frank Schleck, a young rider from Luxembourg on Team CSC, is the son of Johnny Schleck, who used to be one of the great big domestiques for Eddie Merckx in the 1970s.
Right, well, let's move on now as we continue our journey away from Rasto, 174 kilometres down to Gap, not a place that Joshiba Bolocki likes to visit these days. It was there where he crashed, of course, in last year's Tour de France. Couple of mountains on the way, few undulations before the finish, and then, as usual when you finish in Gap, it's a downhill run to the line.
For the final 2 climbs of the day are first category climbs, the Col de la Sentinelle coming at 142 kilometres covered, and the final climb after they drop down into the finishing town of Gap is the Col de Mons, and they go out on a small circuit of 22 kilometres. Once again, control on the front end of the main field coming from CSC. They're very much in control of Paris-Nice here. They're in the driving seat. And I think everybody now, Phil, is starting to get just a little bit scared of them, because they have done nothing wrong since we left Paris almost 6 days ago.
Just looking down there, the vineyards not even fruiting. While in the other part of the world, in South Africa and Australia, the vineyards are actually the grapes are being harvested right now.
This is Aitor Oser on the front, and in fact he's looking to try and get himself a few points in the King of the Mountains classification. He's been joined by Nicolas Portal. Neither of these riders really are a threat to the overall race, because they're 107th and 115th overall, and both of them more than a quarter of an hour behind in the overall classification.
Well, the ideal men charge for the breakaway now when this happens, because they know the peloton's not going to chase them. The lead is building now. We're heading up to circa 5 minutes over the peloton. Rabobank showing a little bit more interest.
Well, they built a maximum advantage, these guys, at 90 kilometres of 11 minutes over the main field. But at 50 kilometres to go, it's starting to tumble just a little bit.
Well, the peloton, for once, seems to be holding themselves together here now. They've been rather shocked by the way this race has gone over the previous few days. Time gaps opening they weren't expecting, and amongst the non-starters, by the way, today, the sprinter Baden Cook, he does have a knee problem, which he's becoming a little bit more concerned about, and that may be his reason for not riding. And Dario Frigo, past winner of this race, also going out. And we're hearing too, having climbed off since the start, Santiago Botero. Let's hope he's not going to go into the doldrums like he did last year.
Bit of a surprise, really, because he didn't ride too bad an individual time trial, and I wonder if he's going to get his training right this season, because T-Mobile will put an awful lot of pressure onto him. These are the 2 leaders. On the front there is Aitor Oser in second position, Nicolas Portal, and looking at his shoulders there, Phil, I think he's just starting to weaken a little bit. They've still got 2 very difficult climbs to go before they get to the finishing line, although they will get a chance to see what the finishing line looks like as they go through it after 148 kilometres covered on this 174 kilometre stage. 4.5 minutes. It's starting to come down quite sensibly.
Yes, a chance to see the new colours here of the Balearic Islands team, now the main sponsor of the old iBernesto.com squad.
Difficult day for the Spanish riders as well. There was a minute's silence at the start because of the Madrid bombings, and it really has wreaked havoc on the Spanish teams in Paris-Nice here. 3 Spanish teams taking part in Paris-Nice: Euskaltel-Euskadi, Liberty Seguros, and this new team as well we're looking at here, the Il Baleares, and this is Aitor Osa representing Spain, looking for the win if he can.
Well, it shows he could get a few results on the single-day races last year because he finished second in the Flèche Wallonne. And it's not often a Spanish rider does well in the single-day classics, although I have to say they're getting more and more commonplace now in the thick of the action. Let's not forget that Igor Astaloa is now the world champion, and he rides for Cofidis. Nice compact field. They're not going to rush things here to bring back those 2 leaders. And while they stay away, of course, Osa is gathering points in the King of the Mountains competition, and that's much more his forte. King of the Mountains in the Tour of Spain 2 years ago.
Looking down here at La Durance, the advantage of those 2 leaders as they head up into the big mountain stage now is going to be very precarious. At 4.5 minutes, I feel absolutely certain they will get pulled back towards the end, because this climb, the Col de la Sentinelle, is a very difficult climb which takes the riders up to around about 1,200 meters in altitude, and on the front end of the main field it's Rabobank here, Phil, taking a very serious option on trying to get themselves a win. This is Matty Heyman on the front doing a lot of work for the team.
And Matty of Rabobank is an Australian. Think about Paris-Nice is the organisers try to understand that the riders don't have the grand form of July when they ride the Tour de France, so they don't try to absolutely kill them on the bicycles over the 8 days they ride. They put a series of hills in which are enough to test the ability of the bike riders, but not normally enough to split the field asunder. This is a very fast tempo ride at the lower slopes of the climb, though, I have to say. Fassa Bortolo, without their big sprinter this year in the race, Alessandro Patacchi.
He's decided to race on the other side of the Alps, and that's in the Tirreno Adriatico race, which will be starting pretty shortly to get all of those riders ready to take part in Milan-San Remo, which is the first big rendezvous of the one-day classics. But I have to say, Phil, I think Frank Vandenbroucke is looking pretty good in this bike race.
Never understand when Frank's going to come out with the goods. He's one of those riders. He could be absolutely brilliant or a total disaster. But it now looks to me as though Nicolas Portal is beginning to suffer here, because Osa is thinking King of the Mountains, and this is where he gains his points. He's a much finer rider on the mountains. Winner of the Tour of the Pays Basque in 2002 and the Tours of Aragon and Rioja. He's also had stage wins in the Tour of Portugal, all of them on hilly days. This is a perfect day for him today, and quite clearly a plan. He's conscious too, the new team on the block, this white jersey of the Balearic Island squad. He wants to get them on the map as well.
He's not losing all that much time. It's just come down 15 seconds to 4 minutes and 15. And I have to say, Aitor Osa on the front is looking very comfortable, while Nicolas Portal, Phil, I think he's just happy to be here. And I have a funny feeling we could see him getting dropped in the near future, because he keeps sitting up and stretching his back just a little bit. And that's an indication after a very long breakaway that he's starting to tire. This is their first few kilometers now as we start to kick up towards the summit of the Col de la Sentinelle. And you can see the main field starting to stretch out, starting to take a little bit more seriousness in the pacemaking on the front end of the peloton, because they realise that the chance now of getting Jorg Jaks off the front end of this bike race, this is the first time really I think we're going to see CSC come under pressure.
Well, Portal, he's a Frenchman, but he is comes from Auch actually, which is a beautiful area of France. But he is not a rider who's won bike races, but he had a very inspired Paris-Roubaix last year when he finished 16th. And he also got 16th in the Classique des Alpes. So he may not win races, but he is certainly not a rider to dismiss, because he does like the hills.
Well, this is the new colours as well of Liberty Seguros on the front, and I have a feeling they might be thinking about their man Alan Davis, who's shown since the start of this year that he's got very fine form. And the ability that Alan Davis has, Phil, is not only is he a very good sprinter, but better than some of the other sprinters. He can get his body over some of these very difficult climbs, and I think that may be the plan for Liberty Seguros this afternoon. Alan Davis has already had 2 wins so far this season, and both of those were on the island of Mallorca.
Yes, he got him off to a great start. Well, there's the beautiful countryside here now as we head towards the Alps. Not climbing the big famous climbs that we'll see later on, of course, in the Tour de France. And the Alps this year in the Tour de France, one has to say, are going to have a very, very major role with the time trial on Alpe d'Huez. And Paul Sherwen and I predicting there about 1.5 million people are going to line the slopes of Alpe d'Huez this year. What a day out that's going to be for everybody cheering on the American Lance Armstrong.
It's going to be a big battle on the slopes of the Alpe d'Huez, that's absolutely certain, and maybe a record time will be posted by the winner of that individual time trial, because instead of doing 150 kilometers before they get there, they're going to start right in the bottom at the Bourg d'Oison. These are the two leaders, tête de la course, the two men who escaped after 55 kilometers of racing, built themselves a maximum advantage of 11 minutes over the peloton. But slowly but surely now that time advantage is starting to be eaten away by the main field. I have a feeling, Phil, in the back of a lot of these riders' minds in the peloton that they want to crack a stranglehold over the next 3 days of CSC, because they've led this race, and I'm beginning to think they might have done just a little bit too much work over the first few days.
Just about 30 miles to go to the finish here. 45, 46 kilometres. There's the gap coming inside 4 minutes now at 3:55. We're on the climb of the Col de Sentinelle. We've just got a shot there of the actual tower on the top. We're heading up towards the snow line. We might just stay below it though here in the Alps, because they're on the higher mountains with the snow right now. But there is a lot of work being done by the peloton. Well, at least a lot of work by one or two of the teams of the peloton. The rest seem to be quite content to follow wheels. But now we're getting the tail of the peloton forming, which means a lot of riders are now feeling these high tempo riding. It is not a climb where you jump out of the saddle and slog your way to the summit. This is a nice steady mountain road where if you can hold a fast cadence, you will move away from the front of the peloton.
It's a steady climb of around about 20 kilometers. It never really kicks up very much more than 5.5% in gradient. But one or two riders taking a lot more interest on the front end of the main field. Fassa Bortolo too, I think, smarting from the fact that Frank van den Broeke missed out on the move yesterday. He was well up in the overall classification. I wouldn't be surprised to see a move coming from a rider like Frank van den Broeke on a stage like this, because there is a very tricky descent off the summit of the Col de la Sentinelle down into the town of Gap, where the riders will cross the finish line and go out on a circuit of 22 kilometers, and a nasty little circuit too, because that includes another first category climb, the Col de Mons.
Just looking here, Paul, at the front with the Liberty Seguros team. Their leader this week is Isidro Nozal, the domestique, who became quite a star of last year's Tour of Spain. Didn't get off to too good a start in this race though, did he?
No, a bit of a problem in the individual time trial with his watch, because he actually missed the start. He lost 50 seconds, and in fact he came out of the starting gate, and his delay into getting into the starting gate actually caused a bit of a problem for Dario Friga, who pulled out of the race early on this morning. And Isidro Nozal has got to do an awful lot to confirm the lead that he had in the Vuelta a España last year. I think it's going to be very difficult for this team, a brand new team, Liberty Seguros, and I think they'll be looking much more towards performances in Paris. Oh, that's a good move.
That was very nice. He's gone the wrong way now. He's in the spot of bother here for sure. He's going to have a little bit of a climb back onto the road. Well, just a little lack of road there. I'm not too sure who it was, but it was a quick step rider. There's another look for you. It was the rider from Phonak. I'm not too sure he realised he was there. Can't say I recognise him, Paul.
I think it was Kevin Holtzmans who went off there. Now, it just goes to show what kind of a reaction he had there, because he never panicked at all. It's rather strange, because the last time we saw a little bit of cyclocross in a race like this was actually also on the road down into Gap, when Armstrong picked his way across a very nasty little cornfield after he missed the crash of Yoshiba Belocchi. And I'm beginning to wonder, Phil, with Yoshiba Belocchi, the ongoing problems that he seems to be having at the start of the season here is whether or not he will actually get back to racing this year, because the team seem to be holding him back all of the time. And this consistent, repetitive tendinitis that he keeps having makes me wonder whether we'll actually see him racing in the Tour de France this year.
Well, I hope we do, but you see, the big problem is he wants to get back to form. He's changed teams. He's gone to La Broche de Boulanger. And the trouble is, if you push it too hard too soon, then the long term is that you don't get back and you waste time in the end. So he's a lot of wasted muscle to be rebuilt there after his time out with that badly broken leg. Let's hope he does get back in time for the Tour. 3:35, these boys are doing a very commendable ride right now, because the peloton, you can see how hard they are working, yet they're only chipping in to seconds of that gap just now.
Nice little property there, fresh for renovation. I suppose you could move in there and put a new roof on the top of that.
Goodness knows how they got the bricks up there in the old days, but they did a good job.
Small town of Tayar, which is about 5 kilometers from the start of the climb. And these riders now are certainly whipping up the pace. You can see the main field is certainly stretching out into a big long line. I think a lot of these teams are getting a little bit fed up by the domination of CSC here this afternoon, and you can see at the back end of that peloton a lot of riders are starting to stretch out, and they'll be put under some serious pressure. A man who I think has ridden very well in the first few days of Paris-Nice here is George Hincapie. He's never really made any moves, but he's never been too far away from the front end of the race, and I'd like to see and think that there's a possibility, Phil, that George could get himself a stage win here at Paris-Nice.
Well, he's maintained his great result from the time trial, and he's converted that into holding a good situation in the overall classification. He's riding sharp. I've seen him alongside Yatka on a number of occasions today, so he's paying attention, which means he's interested in a result here in Paris-Nice. What a difference a year makes, because George was already heading back home this time last year, not feeling at all well, wondering what was going wrong, and he never came out at all into his favourite spring classic. So maybe it'll be back to normal for him this year.
I think that difficult start to the season last year was probably a blessing in disguise for George, because it gave him a forced rest, having raced at the top end of the sport for an awful long time. I think taking out a month and taking out the classics managed to give him what I thought last year was his best ever Tour de France performance. We saw him going up some of the very big mountain passes with Lance Armstrong for a very long time.
The face here of a rather tired and suffering Nicolas Portal, Frenchman on AG2R, but nonetheless still going good. Osa has got to be odds on here to get the King of the Mountains points at the top. He is the pure climber, but he'll welcome the attention from Portal, because they are still sharing the pace. But you see, when Osa goes through, Portal is placed in a bit of difficulty. I can't see this group staying away to the finish, but then the way this Paris-Nice has gone this week, you can't be certain in anything.
We're starting to really bite, because there was a few other non-starters this morning as well. Christian Neerman didn't come down to the starting gates. Either did Marcus Lundqvist, and Chris Peers was also not found to start this morning. So I think it is starting to pay, and the fact that we've had some pretty nasty weather conditions, I think as well, Phil, the organisation are taking a bit of a risk coming this far over in France. There's Floyd Landis. Landis missed out on that first day on the open road, losing himself 5 minutes and 15 seconds when really I thought he was one of the pre-race favourites for Paris-Nice this year.
I agree. Yatsk holding that yellow jersey and wearing it with pride today, and feeling he's got a great team around him. Landis is concentrating there.
Levi Leipheimer moving to the front. He too was one of the big losers on that first day on the open road. Hincapie there, Phil, on the right-hand side, looking very calm and very concentrated. He wants to stay in contact when this group starts to split towards the end, because I'm absolutely certain we'll see a situation in the last climb of the day when we've got maybe 15 or 20 riders going over the top of that together.
40 kilometres, 25 miles to ride to the finish. Once we're over the top of the Sentinel, there's still one more climb to come, and one sprint as we run in towards the finish. And it's going to be tough for these boys to hold them off. I think they want the big points at the top of this climb. It's a first category climb, this. Oops, and nearly a touch of wheel there for Nicolas Portal. He's so anxious now not to give an inch to Osa in the lead.
Well, Thomas Ziegler is leading the King of the Mountains classification after being in the breakaway for a long time a couple of days ago with Leon Van Bon. And I think the fact that this man at the front here, Aitor Osa, has got himself some serious points out on the course. He'll be thinking about taking over the overall lead, because this first category climb, Phil, will give him an awful lot of points. And it's the kind of competition that the Spanish take very seriously, the King of the Mountains classification. Time to see that, I think that's 3 minutes and 15 seconds, so it's still coming down, but not really all that fast.
Could have been 3:45. I couldn't actually read that, but just looking at the face of Osa there, he doesn't look like a man who's nearly 31 years of age, I have to say. He looks very young. He reminded me of Oscar Sevilla for a moment just then, as he continues on. 9th in the Tour of Spain in the year 2001. He won the King of the Mountain in the same event in 2002. He loves the high mountains. There's the peloton now, and just doing what they have to do. The riders are slight slowing down at the front there, because the chain behind is closing the gaps.
I think they're just backing off a little bit before they really start the climb in earnest, and they're probably just trying to figure out just exactly what the tactics are they're going to adopt. The difficult thing about the Col de la Sentinelle for me, Phil, is not really the ascent, because it's a fairly steady, gradual ascent all the way up to the summit and 1,200 meters in altitude. It's the descent that really is very difficult and tricky on the road down into Gap, and as they cross the line in Gap, They've got a time bonus sprint that they'll have to contend with, and then they go out onto that rather tricky 22-kilometre circuit. There's Matty Wilson there, the new Australian national champion, just moving across to the right-hand side, and keeping himself right in the action there at the front was Dave Brylance of the new Chocolat Jacques team.
Well, they really are moving quite well. No sign of the snow just yet, and there's trouble now at the front. It's just the tempo's just proving a little bit too much now. Into the red zone goes Nicolas Portal, and I don't think he's going to get back up to Osa. Osa cannot afford to wait for him because the peloton are just a little bit too close. He wants the points at the top of the climb for sure, because first category points here could see him in the lead by the end of the stage in that competition.
I think Aitor Oso waited as long as he could here with the Frenchman to take as much of advantage from the two of them working together, but now that they've got onto the early slopes of the climb, I think it's just a little bit too steep here for Nicolas Portal, and you can see the fact that he's rocking his shoulders a bit. He's well wrapped up against the cold, and I think he's probably just generated a little bit too much heat in his body, and he now will have to sit up and wait to get caught by the main field, and I think that face tells it all.
Well, I know how he feels, at least, as he now is just going to try and hang on here. Maybe going over the top in second place. But the catch will not be much longer. It's 142 kilometres covered at the top, leaving just on 32 kilometres, 20 miles down to the finish, but we have one more climb on the way. Another first category climb as well, although it's not so long as this one.
Still pretty tricky, Aitor Osa there. I wonder if they will actually turn up the screws when they get to this climb, because he's a long way down in the overall classification. He's lost 15 minutes and 58 seconds since the start of Paris-Nice, and he started the day in 107th place overall, but he's obviously got a lot of energy in those legs of his. He realizes right now that was not much point sitting up and waiting for Nicolas Portal, and that's Laurent Biondi there in the team car, the former world points champion, who's the assistant team manager here for AG2R, but that's what it's all about. It's a tough sport, and it's a tough day here at Paris-Nice.
And it always seems that little bit more tougher at this time of the year when the body's not quite up to it. But he's going to get picked up. Let's hope he can stay away just over the summit of the climb. The cars are now leaving him behind. Always a horrible feeling when you're a professional cyclist, as the cars just leave you to ride your own race.
Still ticking out a fairly reasonable rhythm. His big hope right now would be that he'd get caught by a small group that starts to come off the front end of the main field. But he's really bobbing the top half of his body, and there you can see Aitor Osa has completely disappeared. And I think the next time we get a time check, we'll see that Nicolas Portal is around about a minute in the rear of the Spaniard, and the main field will slowly but surely start to pull up to the Frenchman.
Well, our camera's decided enough is enough, and here we go. We'll get some idea perhaps of the gap right up there in the distance. Won't be far off a minute right now, Paul. Maybe 40 seconds, a little bit more perhaps, but going clear all of the time. All of the cars have found their new man, Aitor Osa, the Ile Balier Venesto rider, and now he's full of the joys of spring here. He really is driving on.
Going to have to do something special to survive to the top of this climb, because the last time check we got was 3 minutes and 15 seconds to the main field, but it's starting to tumble very quickly, and just crackling over race radio, it's announcing that the advantage now is 2 minutes and 30 seconds, or 2 minutes 33 if you want to be exact.
2:33. Now, I know many of you are on your home trainers when you play our videos because you tell us so. Well, we better get in the rhythm here now, because the pressure's going on for this man at the front. Aitor Osa not racing for a yellow jersey, but he would like the King of the Mountains title. No small consolation prize. He could stitch it up today with a good ride.
First category climb, this the Col de la Sentinelle, 142 kilometres covered at the top, and that's 30 kilometres to go to the finish. But unfortunately, it's not all downhill, because they drop down into gap and then go out onto that very tough finishing circuit of 22 kilometres from the finishing line over the Col de Mons. Pretty bleak at the start of the year here, and very cold as well there, 3 degrees Celsius out on the start line this morning, and that correlates to around about 40 degrees Fahrenheit, and that's probably, Phil, why the main field there is huddling together, just trying to keep themselves warm.
But it's a wonderful part of the world at this time of the year. I think that was the last kilometre sign we just quickly saw there. And still this man is staying clear of the field and looks good at the moment. He's going to top the climb certainly in first place. The road suffered a lift from the winter by the look of it, but he's finding a safe way through.
He was first over the top of the previous first category climb, which was the Col de Morsaigne, and that was after just 61 kilometers of racing. I have a feeling that's why he went out on this attack, to try and get himself some King of the Mountains points. If he gets this one, then he will be the new leader of the King of the Mountains classification, a lead that he'll take away from Thomas Ziegler.
And Ziegler, because of his breakaway, really has been the leader of the King of the Mountains. He's not a mountain climber at all. It's now passing over to one of the pure thoroughbreds of the mountains. Just a little sprinkling of snow up there on the tops. You may not get that high, although I don't know. We're still going up, and here come the peloton. Rabobank doing a lot of work in here too.
Well, they could be thinking about moving Levi Leipheimer up into a position to try and get the win, because I think Levi Leipheimer's got some pretty good form at the start of this year, and he wants to put away last year completely away, I would say, because it was a terrible year for him. He banked everything on the Tour de France and went down on the very first day in the open roads of the Tour last year, and had that very nasty accident, and it took him a long time to get back. So I think this year he wants to start the season afresh, and he wants to try and get himself up into a nice position and maybe get himself a stage. There's the yellow jersey, completely surrounded by the red and white guard of CSC, and his teammate Bobby Julich has certainly been looking after him quite a bit. Here's Nicolas Portal, and I would think if we pan back just a little bit, we'll see the main field right on his tail.
Well, there's still some cars behind him, so let's give him at least half a minute over the field, and it's not going to be much more than that, is it? Because there's the no. It's probably around 40 seconds now, and he's lost his impetus, so he will be picked up. The field is continuing to climb as a big pack, and not seemingly losing many riders off the tail of it. But the rhythm is there, and they will know now exactly where Portal is, and that'll be one back in the pack. The Rabobank boys, a bit of a dry run for them perhaps, because they're going to try and carry Levi Leipheimer to a great Tour de France this year. There's a chance to do some work and get the practice in here in Paris-Nice. If the prizes went for bad luck, that terrible crash on the second day of the Tour de France, taking out Levi, that was a cruel, cruel blow.
Frank Vandenbroek moving up there into 5th place now. Frank has been very attentive over the last few kilometres and the last few days. I think he's looking to try and move himself up a little bit more in the overall classification. Just on the inside there in the blue and white jersey of Fassa Bortolo. I suppose you could say that he's the bad boy of professional cycling, and I would have to say, Phil, this is his very, very last chance at trying to come to the top end of the sport. So moving up the outside there, it's like Victor Hugo Peña, and I wonder what this move is for.
Well, there is an attack by, I think you're right. It is Peña trying to get it clear. Talking to Frank Vandenbroek, the last Belgian winner of this race, by the way, was Frank. A few years ago now, 1998, I think it was. Frank's had he could write a book on what's happened to him since 1998, so let's hope he can reshape his life again this time around.
He probably needs to move into a team where there is a very strict team manager, and Giancarlo Ferretti, who is the team manager of Fassa Bortolo, will not take any messing at all from any of his riders, and I think maybe that's just exactly what Frank Vandenbroek needs. Just moving up there, Chocolat Jacques rider was Dave Brylance. The yellow jersey now just getting rid of his raincoat and his over jacket, because he wants to make sure that he doesn't overheat on this next climb of the day, and he realizes that he's going to get 1 or 2 attacks, and there's a nice souvenir for somebody as he throws away his raincoat.
Brand new team on the block, Chocolat Jacques. We came across it for the first time just a while ago now in the Tour de Langkawi in Malaysia. And Brylance was a significant pacemaker in that race. Now, the pressure has been applied at the front, largely by that flurry coming out of Victor Hugo Peña. And it's opened the door right in the centre of the peloton.
Telecom very attentive on the front end of the main field. It's the sort of first stage today where we could see a small breakaway trying to launch themselves off the front. There's some pretty good climbers moving to the front end of the main field.
Christian Werner there setting the pace. And through on the inside here, a little attack going off the front. And it looks to me as though it's, I think it's Kashenkin.
Right, yep.
Well, he's a new rider to me from Kazakhstan.
A new rider on Crédit Agricole this year. He's a Kazakh rider who's going out on the attack. He's not got very much advantage over the main field, but I think the big teams this afternoon are going to try and close it all down if they can, because they're going to have a big showdown on the final climb of the day, the Col de Mons, which is a very difficult climb. And let's not forget, the race situation at the moment is still one leader, Aitor Osa. A little bit further back down the road, Nicolas Portal is still managing to survive, but this is a very good move here by this rider from Kazakhstan, Kashekin.
Well, once we start getting these flurry of attacks, and as we can see now, a counter-attack going off the front, then it is going to slowly close down the gap to the leader. Haven't seen Portal be swept up, but he can't be very far away. This is an Euskaltel-Euskadi rider who's gone forward, and there is Portal.
Moving across there, it looked like Echevarria who was trying to come across. That's Portal, who's going to get picked up very rapidly, and I would think almost immediately he'll get dispatched by the main field, because he's been at the front end of the bike race since the 55th kilometre. Coming out of the group there is Kashakin, and it looks like the small figure of Echevarria, but it's not David, in fact it's Unai.
Yes, and he looks like David from this position in the helicopter as well, but we know it's not David because he's not riding, you see. You can't fool us. Unai Echevarria, we think it is, now latched onto the back here. Another good climber, quality. Look at that. Portal trying to lift his pace even now and hang on to these two just for that little bit longer. Good for him.
Pretty brave move, but I don't think he'll stay there for too long, because once they start to turn up the screws, in fact, as they do it there, you can see Portal is being dropped by the group, and the main field is right on his coattails. And along the front of that group, it's the blue and white jerseys of Fassa Bortolo. I think we need to watch out for Frank van der Broek when we get to the top of this climb, Phil.
Well, it's the first time that we've seen CSC. I'm not saying they're in difficulty, but they're not driving the race. They're letting others do it, and that might be a sign that they are having less of a good day today. Now we're getting into the big hills of this year's race. The peloton going round this horseshoe bend, and I hope our camera just holds to see what damage is happening at the rear of the bunch. But it looks as though that split got itself repaired a little bit.
Just pull back that slight counter-attack of two riders, but you can see the damage that has been done. It looks like there's a CSC rider going off the back of the group, and it may well be the first time that there's a chink starting to appear in the armour of CSC, Phil, because they are not dominating the front end of this group. As we can see, one or two riders are already starting to disappear from the race.
The pace at last has cracked the back end of the peloton. This continues a little ways yet as we get higher up the mountain. There's the twists and turns of the Col de Sentinel, taking us up to 142 kilometres covered. Now we're still banking on this being Unai Echevarria. It looks like him, but we haven't had a chance. In fact, we're all wrong. It is Landaluza of Spain. They're saying it's number 78 there. Right team, wrong rider.
There's Alex Zula coming across here. Alex Zula from Phonak has moved across the gap there. He's looking to try and get himself into a situation where he too can go out on the counter-attack. He might be one of the older riders of the main field, but I tell you what, Phil, at the start of this season he's got himself some pretty serious legs as he ticks over there, and it looks a little bit further down the road there, as if Dave Brylance is trying to get himself across.
Well, it's nice to see Alex in the throes of his final year as a professional, trying to get himself some great form.
Yep, his 36th birthday will be on the 5th of July, and I wonder if he'll make the Tour de France team this year. I'm not sure whether they'll bring him in at almost 36 years of age. He's been for so many years a possible contender for the overall win. This is Dave Brylance now taking over the pacemaking, looking over his shoulder to see who's with him, and this is Levi Leipheimer who's made the junction.
And that's the reason that Rabobank were doing all of that pacemaking, and they've got a policeman here with CSC tagging on to the back as well, which is interesting. But it's very good to see Leipheimer getting into the mix again. He wants now to rebuild his confidence as we start a new season. Forget 2003, that wasn't to be for him, coming after he did after his fine 9th place in the previous year's Tour de France, and then came the crash. He's riding very, very well, and he's going up behind those two riders now. 5 quality riders, because Brylance himself is a very, very good climber, Dave Brylance, and he's coming here after finishing 3rd in the Tour de Langkawi.
This is a pretty serious gap these guys have got over the front end of the main peloton, and as you can see, CSC are still not taking up the pacemaking, and this is a good move of 5 riders, and that's obviously why Rabobank were on the front end of the main field just a few moments ago. They were trying to set something up for their man Levi Leipheimer.
Now it's being left to others to do the chasing now, and Jatska is still there in the yellow jersey. Still riding quite strongly. He won't be too worried about the pattern of the attacks yet, because they're not going to harm his yellow jersey as we head to the summit now of the Col de la Sentinelle.
Aitor Oso is going to get himself maximum points here, and that would give him the new lead in the overall classification of the King of the Mountains race. He got the last one, and this will give him another nice little crack at the points, but his time gap is starting to come down quite sensibly. The last time check we got to this man was just 1 minute and 8 seconds over the group.
He's riding with some good style here as he comes up towards the summit. They're saying 145 kilometres done over the top of the climb. Not that far to the finish, but there's still another climb on the way, the Col de Mons, and that is a steeper climb than the Sentinel.
Pretty nice of the organisation, I think, to take the riders over this Col de la Sentinelle, drop them down into the finish line and say, well, here we are in Gap, boys. Now, let's go and do another 22 kilometres and you can have another first category climb to boot. Well, this group has now been pulled back into the fold, but it was not CSC doing the pacemaking on the front end there. It's Quick Step Davitamon, and they've pulled back that little group there with Alex Zuller and Levi Leipheimer.
I would think, looking back there's still cracks in that peloton now. It's getting smaller by the minute as we head up towards the summit of the climb. Here's the champ of the day, shortly to be the new leader in the King of the Mountains. Change of jersey to him tomorrow, if things go according to plan.
A long breakaway for him. He's been at the front of the race for almost 100 kilometres right now. He escaped after 55 kilometres of racing, and he's holding on there to 1 minute and 20 seconds. But the fact that they're starting to move all of the cars out, Phil, I think you probably find that the group is coming up to him quite quickly. There's the top of the climb. Just got to survive another 500 metres, and that's always a bad sign when you look down to see what the gears are doing, because you realise that, yes, it does hurt quite a bit as you get to the top of these big cols at the early start of the season.
Well, I must say that had it been bad weather today, this would have been most unpleasant coming up towards the summit here. But fortunately it is dry, if a little bit chilly. Spectators have found their way up as well to wave the leader of Paris-Nice, at least on the road, under the banner, and heading back down now towards Gap before we start that final circuit.
Well, that's maximum points there for Osa. There's a little bit of an acceleration coming at the front end of the group, and again it's Dave Bryalance looking for the gap here this afternoon, and it looks as if that might be Marcos Serrano moving across there for Liberty Seguros.
Well, Bryalance rode very well in the Tour de Langkawi. A little bit unlucky, he actually crashed approaching the finish in the Cameron Highlands on one of the mountain stages, and he lost about 15 seconds. And that damaged the top two finish for him, because crashing in the last kilometre in the mountains, the same time as the leader rule does not apply, and he fell foul of that one, as we now have an attack going off the front from Euskaltel.
Just on the right-hand side there, Floyd Landis was looking very comfortable here as well, Phil. As we said earlier, he's already got himself a stage victory under his belt this year in the Tour of the Algarve, after finishing second in the individual time trial to his teammate Lance Armstrong by a single second. And a funny little anecdote was when they went back to the hotel after the race, Floyd Landis said, "Oh, today I was absolutely flying. I was really going for it." Armstrong came back and said, "Oh, God, I felt so bad today." And when the result came in, Johan Brunel said, "Well, Lance, you've just beaten the Floyd by a second."
Yes. Very depressing, I would think, if you were a teammate of Lance Armstrong. There's the boys going over the top. We'll try, and there could be one of the Liberty Seguros riders there. We'll pick that up for you in a second.
It's Alberto Contador on the front. He rode a very good individual time trial on day one. He's not a rider I know very much about, but he has been pretty aggressive since the start of Paris-Nice. Big time gap, 1 minute and 8 seconds to the lone leader, Aitor Osa, but I don't think he's going to hold off too much longer, Phil, because these guys are certainly whipping up the pace on what is going to be a very tricky and technical descent down here into Gap.
A bit of dampness on the road, you can probably see with the tyre tracks there. It's not a sunny day by any means. A little bit of dampness in the air as we now plunge towards Gap on these beautiful roads. At this time of the year, riding your bike here can be a pleasure. Not many cars bother to come up these mountains, even when the roads aren't closed, to see the sights, but the cyclists find them as they continue their training sessions. Now, Osa is not going to kill himself plunging into Gap, that's for sure. He's going to take it easy and then see if he can find the legs to stay away just on the Col de Mans. I don't think he's got any chance of winning the stage, but stranger things have happened.
Well, we're looking down here at the second group on the road. They're chasing Aitor Osa. This is Contador on the front. I think that is Carlos Sanchez in second position. And there's an Il Baleares rider in third, so they're actually in the defensive mode, which is quite a good move for them. But they've not got that much of an advantage over the main field, which has been seriously reduced in numbers because of that very difficult Col de la Sentinelle. And in fact, there must be quite a big split in the group, because there's only the neutral service car behind this peloton, which is around about 45 riders in strength. Back with the leader, Aitor Osa, descending a little gingerly, and it's always precarious this time of the year, because you can see some parts of the road are dry and some parts are wet. if you come full bore into one of these corners there, you've got a very serious chance of finding it quite damp. Confirmation of the Col de la Sentinelle. It was in fact Alberto Contador who did go across in second position there, and it was Gonzalez getting the third place.
Yes, that was Gorka Gonzalez, the Spanish rider there on the Euskaltel team. So they're all having a go except the man we thought it was, which was Unai Echeverria. I haven't seen him in fact. This is a very, very technical descent here, and no risks being taken at all by Osa. Can't blame him for that. Sensible descent. He may be aware there are 3 riders trying to reach him because they have these radios, and if he is, he may want to let them reach him. Here they come, and led by a very active Alberto Contador here for Liberty Seguros, really giving it everything he's got on the way down. Just right in the distance there, you could see the head of the peloton. This is Gorka Gonzalez, and then comes Carlos Sanchez. He's not going to do much work, is he?
It's a pretty good move by this group here, and just get a chance to see how tricky it is going into that corner. And I would think 1 or 2 riders will be very careful coming down the descent here at this time of the year, because as I say, these are always very difficult and tricky descents in these weather conditions, because there's been a lot of rain and snow coming across the race. I have a funny feeling that Il Balearis rider on the back there, in fact, is Denny Menchoff. He's sitting there quite comfortably, but again, they're not too far off the front end of the main field, and it's still Fassa Bortolo and Phonak who are doing the majority of the pacemaking. There is Georgie Hincapie riding up towards the front. There is Frank van den Broeke riding in front of the yellow jersey Jorg Yats, who Phil, for the moment, is still looking like a very comfortable, solid leader.
Well, there's no doubt he is a teammate of the leader, Aitor Osa, and it could well be Menchoff. So Sanchez has gone back into the group. So looking here now at the result, a situation overall in the King of the Mountains, I beg your pardon, 42 points now for Osa. He's gone 10 clear of Ziegler. Wasn't in the points on that climb. Bilofagic is there with 16. So Aitor Osa, or is having, Unai Osa rather, is having a very good day out now. This could be a big result for him by the end of the day in that leader's King of the Mountains jersey.
Those 3 counter-attackers now starting to get themselves a very serious move off the front end of this group, and there's no response at all coming from CSC. I think they're trying to play a fairly defensive role here, Phil, because they don't want to put their man in the yellow jersey into the red zone just yet. There at the front end of the peloton, you can see Floyd Landis in second position there. In third place, George Hincapie, who is riding very well up in the overall classification, and Yaks just sitting there, keeping an eye on affairs.
Well, he's still got the advantage of having plenty of time in hand over the riders who have slipped off the front. Aitor Osa, Contador, Gonzalez. I'm pretty certain Menchoff is with them. Might get a better chance of him to see shortly. That's a good working group here. Gorka Gonzalez setting the pace, and it is Dennis Menchoff at the back, just keeping an eye on things. He's not going to help at all here. So a teammate is on his way up.
Well, Denny Menchoff is the leader of Il Balearis here at the Paris-Nice race. The best young rider in the Tour de France last year, a competition, Phil. I think he won by about 45 minutes or something. Nobody else could even challenge him when it came to doing that.
Well, they're still getting the caption a little bit wrong there. Now they're telling us Wilfried Kretschke has come and joined the front runners. Well, it's not at all. It's Alberto Contador, Gorka Gonzalez, and Denny Menchoff are the 3 riders trying to cross the gap.
2 more riders scrambling across there right now, and the front end of the main field is stretching out into one big long line. It's US Postal Service doing the majority of the pacemaking, and most of that work is being done by Floyd Landis. Maybe they're just thinking about the possibility of a win for George Hincapie this afternoon. I've got a feeling George Hincapie's got a winning of a stage in his legs in this year's Paris-Nice, because he's looked pretty good since the start of the season, and he may well want to test himself before Milan-San Remo, and of course the big week that he really enjoys in the northern part of France and Belgium, the Tour of Flanders and Paris-Roubaix.
Yes, and I wonder if Lance Armstrong might join him for that spring season. Certainly George would welcome that, but Lance will have his own agenda, of course, as he builds up for his 6th assault straight on the Tour de France. Well, things are closing up pretty much wholesaledly here now, as the peloton is also whipping up the pace, and it could well come together before we get down to gap.
I saw just one rider dropping off the group there, and it looks as if Alberto Contador, Phil, had decided to sit up. We're still looking at the situation here. The Tête de la Course is still Aitor Osa. He's had a very good day out on the open roads of Paris-Nice. He's got himself a very solid lead in the King of the Mountains classification, but right now the race is pretty much on behind him. He had 1 minute and 8 seconds advantage at the start of this descent, and I think if he looks back, he won't have to look back very far to see the main field. In fact, they're just over on the other side of that field.
And he knows it too. That's exactly what he's doing here. It would be nice to stay away though over the last climb of the day and get maximum points. That would give him a good lead. Here comes the chasing group here. Gorka Gonzalez is the Euskadel rider there. His teammate Denny Menshoff is there. I didn't see Contador.
I think he actually sat up just a few moments ago and decided to wait for the main field, because the main field are not that far behind. I mean, there's only about 30 seconds separating the whole of the front end of the race here. Quick Step tried to take up the chase there, but decided it was just a little bit too hard. And right all over the front end of the main field is the yellow jersey. As we now get a chance, looks as if Contador is coming back up to the front. Now, this is rather an interesting move, and it's interesting to see this situation developing. They've picked up Aitor Osa, and in fact they've picked up everybody else as well.
Well, that all happened rather quickly here. George Hincapie is also up as the group has come back together, and Jurgiatski has got himself back into contention right for the day's victory. And they've still got the journey through Gap ahead of them, plus the final climb of the Col de Mans.
They'll drop down in a few kilometres right into the very heart of Gap, and then they will go out on a 22-kilometre loop, which includes a very difficult Col de Mans. It's a hard climb, I think much harder than the Col de Sentinelle, and of course the descent is a lot more technical as well. But that group, Phil, is not a very big group of bike riders after the Col de la Sentinelle.
No, and if they've got the counter-attack going straight away. Otherwise, they're going to see the peloton get themselves back into this race today, which is a rather strange pattern again. But there's a counter-attack going off the front now.
It's a pretty serious move here, and in fact, this man at the back end of the group here looks like Bobby Julich. Now, this is a very interesting situation because Julich's well up in the overall classification. Kim Kirchen is the rider there from Fassa Bortolo. Alberto Contador once again has got himself into the move, and there is Denny Menshoff. Now, Bobby Julich filled third in the Tour de France a few years ago, back in 1998. He swum around with his career for the last few years trying to find the form, but he now feels very comfortable here with CSC, and he may well be just stealing the jersey away from his own teammate. Now, this is a very clever move by CSC.
Well, when you're in a big team, they're not going to fight it out amongst themselves. If they have a chance to divert attention to another team rider, pass the lead to him, while at the same time keep their other men fairly well up in the classification, they will do that. It's the way the old Soviet Union amateur riders used to always ride the big amateur stage races. They would every day send another man on the attack and move him up into the top 10, building their men at the top of the classification, so they had a choice as they ran into the final few days of the stage race. It's a good plan. CSC might be trying to apply that now. Julich is a huge danger here.
Well, Gerolsteiner have seen the damage there. Their man, David Rebellin, is in second place in the overall classification, which is why he sent one or two of his men to the front to whip up the pace, because they realise that this is a very clever tactical move, and look at the way they've closed that down so quickly. David Rebellin sent the order forward. I think that was Zeberg on the front for Red Gerolsteiner, trying to pull it all back together. Bobby Julich will be licking his lips at the possibility of trying to survive, but they've pulled it all back once again. There's a quick glimpse of Bobby Julich, and the whole of that group is right back onto his tail.
Bobby absolutely contented with his new team. There's no doubt about that. And when you're a settled man, you do good rides, and he's done that in the opening time trial. And now he's content to drive, even though the tail has caught up. And there's a long line. These are great roads now with these constant turns, when you can whip riders off the back of the peloton if you can keep the pressure on at the front. And Julich will be hurting a lot of men down that line right now.
Julich is back in the fold, and you can see Gerolsteiner on the front end keeping this race fairly tightly together. I think they'll be happy with the way the race is starting to unfold. They've got rid of a lot of riders on that last climb there, the Col de la Sentinelle. And we're not too far away now, Phil, from the finishing line in Gap. But it'd be the finishing line for the penultimate time for most of these riders. And this Gerolsteiner rider here is actually pulling Bobby Julich away again. I think the order will come quite quickly to stop, please.
Well, it seems only a while ago when Osa was dictating affairs. He's now history, somewhere back in that peloton, I'm sure. Hopefully he'll get his King of the Mountains jersey at the end of the day. But there's now a number of bike riders here think they can still get this race and win alone or in a small group, because again, an attack trying to get clear. We've still got to go into gap, and we've still got the last climb to come.
Yellow jersey is very attentive. He's all over the front of these moves, and he's making sure that nobody catches him out at all. A very tricky, precarious move for the riders around there. Caught a quick glimpse of Alex Zula in that group. He's having a very good Paris-Nice at the start of this season, and I think he will be a serious teammate for Tyler Hamilton in the latter part of the year, and especially when we get to races like Liège-Bastogne-Liège, which Tyler Hamilton was the overall winner of last year.
Well, Zula knows that this year he has a place in the Tour de France, which he hasn't had that confidence to be sure of these past few years, but Phonak are in the Tour de France this time around, and Tyler Hamilton, of course, is the reason they're in the Tour de France, because he's boosted their ranking in the world ranking competition coming across to them in the winter. Rather sadly for Bjarne Riis and CSC, but they don't seem to have missed him, Paul, so far.
They don't seem to have missed him at all there, but I think CSC have really done a very good job of recruiting during the winter months. They brought Ivan Basso on board and Michele Bartoli, riders who should ride very well for them in the single-day classics, especially races like the Flèche Wallonne and, of course, Liège-Bastogne-Liège, which in the past Michele Bartoli has been an overall winner of. The front end of the main field now, Phil, they are actually whipping up the pace, Gerolsteiner, because I think they're trying to set up a sprint here for David Rebellin. We're just about to go through gap, and there's a bonus sprint point there at 148 kilometers covered. 3 seconds for the first man to cross the line, 2 seconds for third, 2 seconds for second, and 1 second for third. And I have a funny feeling that not too far away from the front of this group, we should get a chance to see the green jersey of David Rebellin.
And normally at this stage of a tour like Paris-Nice, those seconds shouldn't have mattered, but they certainly do this year, because there's a lot of tenacious riders in this peloton. These are the strong men below our helicopter right now, about 35 riders, all seem pretty evenly matched for this time of the year. And this sprint could be crucial to somebody like Rebellin, but watch out too for the CSC, because they also pack a few sprinters.
That's 20 kilometers to go there, and that's going to be 20 kilometers to go, including a very difficult climb, a first category climb of the Col de Mons, as they drop down into gap. Now, I've got a funny feeling the organisation have got their distances a little bit up the spout here, Phil, because in theory it should be 26 kilometers to go from the finishing line, so the finishing circuit, this is going to be a little bit shorter than advertised.
Still continuing downhill here to that sharp left-hander. There's the city of Gap, which changed the face of the Tour de France last July with the crash of Jashiva Balocki, the victory here of Alexander Vinokurov, who by coincidence is the defending champion of this event, but lost all chance in the first couple of days of racing. But he did win yesterday, let's not forget that.
Well, coming up here now, Jörg Yats has taken over the pacemaking from Gerolsteiner. No, he hasn't. He's been put back into second position. They're coming into the finishing straight right now, and it's Gerolsteiner all over the front of the main field, but I cannot see anywhere down that line the green jersey of David Rebellin.
Well, neither can I. In fact, it's simply not there. And look at this now. Jörg Yatske in the yellow jersey has got a perfect lead out and has taken the bonus on the line. He has increased his lead in the overall classification. So I think that was Bobby Julich who led him out as well. So after the pacemaking he did earlier, hats off to him for that. They get the bell because we're now going on a lap. But of course it's not the complete lap of the course we've just ridden. It's now about 20 kilometres or so and includes this rather nasty little climb, the Col de Mons.
Very strange tactical move there by Gerolsteiner, because they did all of the pacemaking on the front end of that main field, and looking down the group there, I cannot see David Rebellin at all, and he must certainly have been thinking about the possibility of getting himself that 3-second time bonus. This is the rest of the group who've actually been left behind on the Col de la Sentinelle, and they're going through the finishing line around about 30 seconds in arrears. Hincapie on the front.
And he needs to get across that gap because he holds a high overall standing here at the moment, and Hincapie knows it too. Gone through 57 seconds behind. This could be bad news for George Hincapie with a climb still to come. Could lose his top position overall. The other American, Bobby Julich, very much up here, defending his third place overall, and he's seeing his leader Jörg Yats get the bonus as well. But let's not forget too, Paul, the bonus for Bobby was also a couple of seconds.
That's an important bonus for Bobby Julich there. He'll be himself well up in the overall classification. I think the team have really dominated the early season here in France, including that complete domination with first, second and third in the Tour of the Mediterranean, with rather a strange team time trial up the Montferrand. Looks as if Tyler Hamilton is in this group, and we're about 2 kilometers away from the start of the very difficult Col de Mons, and that's why I think everyone, Phil, here is looking just a little bit nervous.
Yatsky riding so well, just thrown off. I think it was his racing cape. It's all or nothing now as an attack goes on the right by Phonak. So the climbers are now sharpening their legs. Big effort here now. Yatsky will only concentrate on the men nearest to him. He's got minutes in hand on many of these riders. Must be a wonderful feeling, especially when you've got such a strong team around you. And Julik looking now as though he's becoming the #1 strongman for him.
Absolutely no need at all to chase down any of these attacks. They've just got to look after one or two riders. And the man they're most concerned about really is David Rebellin, who missed out completely on that time bonus sprint there as they went through gap with around about 20 kilometres to go. And there's a move coming off the front end of the main field.
It's the sort of move I would expect to come from Oscar Pereiro of Phonak, because it's a typical ride by the Spaniard. There's somebody else who's gone. Is that a US Postal?
It looks like a dark blue US Postal jersey trying to get across the gap, and I doubt very much if it's going to be George Hincapie, but I am hearing that George Hincapie has managed to get himself back into this group, and a bit of chaos on the front end of the group right now because everybody is throwing complete and utter caution to the wind. This again looks like Bryland's.
Well, there's the result, and in fact it was Pereiro who got third in that sprint, so it could well be Pereiro who has gone clear. It is Dave Bryland's here. That's the result of the sprint, the valuable bonuses. And Dave Bryland's, who can climb as well as anybody, and that's unusual for a Belgian cyclist, I have to say. He's a very good climber on courses like this, and he's come across the gap well.
This is a serious move, and I would think they'll be given a fair amount of freedom because we haven't really kicked into the difficult part of the climb. There is a move coming across there, and it is one of the riders from US Postal Service, and he's been joined by one of the orange jerseys of Euskaltel Euskadi and a Liberty Seguros rider. Everybody wants to get across to this small breakaway.
Well, you would expect somebody like Pena there. I'm just trying to see there. The rider from Phonak is indeed Alexander Moose, who's gone across here. He started the move.
Now, this is Floyd Landis coming across for US Postal Service. It's a very good move for Landis, and here is the leader of Euskaltel Euskadi, and that this time is almost certainly Sammy Sanchez.
Sanchez, the man who carries one on his back as the leader. Now, are we seeing the start here of the winning move of the day? None of these riders too much of a concern yet. Bryland's, Moose, Landis and Sanchez. Grady Agricole starting to go away again. It looks like the Kazakhstan rider again.
I'm a bit surprised at Grady Agricole losing riders through the winter transfer season, like Stuart O'Grady, who's moved across to Team Cofidis, and I'm absolutely certain they'll be kicking themselves, having got rid of the man by the name of Jens Voigt, who's been very strong since the start of this race. That's Alberto Contador again there from Liberty Seguros, looking very aggressive and moving away with Benoit Poilvet of Grady Agricole.
So we've got a possibility of 6 men coming together here as we start the climb of the Col de Mons. There they go, around the top corner, and there's somebody gone clear there. This group already splitting up, and it looks like Floyd Landis has started to move well. Landis now feeling very strong today, I think.
Very strong and very confident after getting himself a pretty serious win in the month of February, but Sammy Sanchez is not letting him go anywhere at all. Dave Bryland's just getting out of the saddle and kicking here, and that's really said, I think, goodbye to Alexander Moose here, who's in a spot of bother.
He started the climb. He didn't throw his cape off like his team, like the other teams did at the bottom of the climb. He's probably feeling like a ton weight on his back right now. He might just get back. They've reformed at the front, and maybe Alexander can just find the effort here to close the gap.
Sammy Sanchez has nailed back to Floyd Landis. Landis in third position there, now being joined by Dave Bryland. And these 3 riders, I think, need to start working together. Now, if I was the team manager of CSC, I'd say, well, let these guys go, because none of them are at all dangerous in the overall classification. We don't have to chase every move down in this race. Maybe today would be an ideal day to just take a bit of a back seat because we've got 2 very difficult days to come over the last 2 days of Paris-Nice. The stage tomorrow down to Cannes is an awfully difficult stage. But a yellow jersey, in fact, Phil, has taken the responsibility of the chase himself.
Well, if you can do that, then you are the rightful leader of the Tour, and he does seem exceedingly strong. He took the bonus from under the nose of everyone at the bottom of the climb, which has moved him out another 3 seconds in the overall classification. The only man that held him was his own teammate, Julik. And now it looks as though he's calming things down again, but the counter-attacks once more. This is Sanchez again.
Well, he doesn't need to chase everything down at the front end of the group there, yellow jersey. I think he needs to just be a little bit more careful and economical with his efforts, and it may well be that Bjarne Riis came across on the race radio there and said to him, just to calm down a bit, you know, we don't have to attack any time till we get down towards the finish, and we've just got to keep a very close eye on David Rebellin. We've still got a situation where there are 3 riders off the front end of the group because Floyd Landis is still surviving up there with Dave Brylant, and as well in that group is Sammy Sanchez. There's the green jersey. For the first time we've seen David Rebellin, I think he's not having a great day.
Well, he knows he's got to hold on this particular climb, and he could have a great finish to the day. 15 kilometres to the finish now as we're heading up towards the summit of the climb. And we've got Floyd Landis here with Dave Brylant and Sammy Sanchez. 3 of them now. 3 pretty strong riders at this stage of the race. Brylant will be thinking it's a good chance for him.
Good chance for him, but you know the big thing about Dave Brylant is he might be a very good climber, but he's probably one of the worst sprinters to come out of Belgium. So if he wants to win the stage here this afternoon, he's going to have to do it on his own. The green jersey there on the front, David Rebellin taking control of the pacemaking. I'm wondering whether or not now at 15 kilometres to go he can put the leader of the race, Jörg Jats, the leader since the very first day, into difficulty. This is Denny Menchov. Again, Il Baleares, Phil, they're looking for the move.
Well, he tried it earlier and he thought he was on the right passenger train going up towards his teammate Osa. That didn't work, but Phil jumped on him. Now he's going to have another go. Continually keeping the pressure on. Not a marked man today, Menchov. He's still got those 3 riders ahead of him, but there were only 20 seconds was the last time check we got for those 3 men up front, and he's already pinched at least 6 or 7 on the peloton. There's no reaction coming. That's a good sign, because Yatska, looking at the green jersey there of David Rebellin, the peloton, they appeared for the moment, Paul, to have turned off.
Well, one man hasn't turned off there in the light blue jersey of Liberty Seguros. Again, it looks as if it's Alberto Contador. He's been very aggressive over the last couple of climbs, and he too now is trying to make the junction with the leading group. But Denny Menchov is riding across the gap. 11th overall in the Tour de France last year, the best young rider. And I think right now he's trying to get himself across the gap. But it's a 25-second gap he needs to ride across if he's going to make the junction with the leading group of 4.
Well, he's made a big decision now. It's all or nothing here, because once the road tips downwards, the advantage will go back towards the chasers. He's good on the uphills, is Menchov, and he's still got to reach those 3 riders. But if 4 of them get together, that could be the stage decided for the day, because there's no reason for CSC to get overly excited now. They've got control still of the final classification, or at least the general classification for the day anyway.
The attack's coming thick and fast. Just swinging off the front of the group there was Bobby Julich. I think they're quite happy with the way the race is starting to develop, and US Postal Service, I think, just trying to stop any more attacks going off the front end of the group, because they're quite happy with the situation. There's another group of 4 riders there just off the front end of the main field and still surviving in front of this group. In fact, is the group that contains Floyd Landis. Looks like Michael Rogers there. Now, Michael Rogers is well up in the overall classification. In fact, he's the best young rider in this year's Paris-Nice, a title that he took on the very first day of racing with a very good individual time trial.
That's Michael tagged on the back there. If it is him, and I think it could be. Meanwhile, back up at the front here, Bryland still working at Landis and Sanchez. These 2 riders clear, and they're out of sight of the chase now. Still waiting to see what's happened to Denny Menchov. But these are the 3 leaders, and they're just over 13.5 kilometres from the finish. There's a group now which looks to be thinning out, but the yellow jersey has made it, and so too the green jersey of Rebellin. So this hill a lot steeper here than the previous climb, and the strength again now will out as the yellow and green move to the front.
Well, this is the first time we've seen a fracturing in the CST domination. Bobby Julich is just staying in there with Jörg Jats, and they're just a little bit off the front end of the main field, but it gives you an indication of just how difficult this climb, the Col de Mons, is. It's around about 7 kilometres from the summit down to the finish line in Gap, and it's a rip-roaring descent, and the fact is it's quite slippy out there, quite damp on the surface, and that's going to make it rather a dangerous descent down into town.
Well, as we look here at the counter-attack, not necessarily chasing the riders ahead, but trying to shed anybody else who is now suffering behind them, and to increase their grip on the leaderboard as well. Those are the 3 riders out front. We are still looking to find out what has happened to Denny Menchov. We're going to have a look now. And the answer is, Paul, he's almost up with them.
Well, he's a great bike rider. He's very good at the uphill sections of the course, but you know, there's not very much in the whole race. There's only around about 30 seconds between that leading group of 3 and the front end of the main field, with a lot of the reactions coming from the Spanish teams. Liberty Seguros and Euskaltel-Euskadi have really been looking for the gap today, but I think in this instance Euskaltel-Euskadi are on the defensive because they've got a very good man in Sammy Sanchez on the front. And I tell you what, I thought they were going to try and put Jorgaerts into difficulty this afternoon, but he's riding a very solid defence. He's a man, Phil, who I think until this season had never ever had a professional victory apart from the time trial championship of the world for the militaries.
That's right, he was originally a military time trial champion. He's shown us that ability on day 1 of this event, but he has ridden now like a true leader of the Tour. He's marshalling every move. And this peloton is down to about 30-35 men, and Menchov has now joined the leaders. 4 riders on the front, there they are for you. We still continue our journey towards the snow line, and Floyd Landis flying another American flag here because the Americans have ridden so well in this race with George Hincapie, Bobby Julich, Tyler Hamilton we haven't seen quite so much of, but we didn't really, in fairness, expect to see too much of Tyler because he did say he was here to help his new teammates do well rather than actually ride for himself.
Floyd Landis, though, looking very comfortable there, taking up the pace from Dave Brylance on the front end of the main field, and we get a chance here just to look back down the road and see what sort of a time gap they've got, and I would say it's around about 30 seconds, and I'm a bit surprised there, Phil, to see a chase coming from Euskaltel-Euskadi. They've got a very good man in the leading group, so this is the kind of move that will aggravate the front end of the peloton and increase their desire to chase.
Well, whoever he is, he may have sensed he had a chance, but he really should be shutting down now because he is, because he's going to damage the lead of his teammate up front. So they're all back in the pack, and again, we're not going to see a counter-attack from CSC. They've got themselves back in control here.
This is Ivan Basso on the front now. There's a domestique for the elites if you want to put a name up there. He's also been the best young rider in the Tour de France a couple of years ago, and he's actually taking over the lead of domestique at the moment, looking after Jorgaerts.
Now
another
that's not
move.
Contador, is it again?
I hope it isn't, because he's been on the attack at almost every moment of this race. It looks very much like it is Alberto Contador coming out of the main group again. He's obviously looking to try and get the win. I think the Spanish teams today, Phil, are looking to try and get themselves a victory after what was a very sad day for Spain yesterday with all that bombing going on.
Yes, well, absolutely. Alberto Contador.
This is Alex Zülle.
And this is Alex Zülle. This man who always looks so thin and upright on the bicycle is now, it's nice to see Alex back in the frame here. He's had a few rough years, and now he's heading towards the end of his career. He came to the Tour de France the first time as a future winner, withdrawn halfway through as a race leader because they felt he was too young, but he never ever got to win the Tour de France in the end.
You can see what happens when you pop on a climb like this. You go straight back into the main field. Floyd Landis in a spot of bother here, just trying to hang on to the tail here. It's Sammy Sanchez on the front doing the bulk of the work now to try and extend that gap, which last time it came to us was just 30 seconds. Menchov in second position. Dave Brylance also taking a bit of a breather after what has been a very good start to the season with him. He finished high up in the overall classification in the Tour de Langkawi. And he said quite openly that in the last 3 days of Paris-Nice, he's looking for a stage win.
A nasty little kick on that corner there. It's certainly steepened the gradient, about 3 kilometres or so still to climb here. There's the one rider, Alex Zülle, trying to cross the gap. And the field are pretty close here. It's certainly far from over now. There could be quite a chase down the other side. Reminds me of Sean Kelly, Paul, who won this race on 7 occasions. He put in some of the most amazing descents to make sure he won that race.
I remember him actually winning Paris-Nice on the descent of the Col de Tanneron. He started the day in second place in the overall classification behind Joop Zoetemelk. And I actually said to him that morning, we were so close to the finish in Nice, I said, well, Sean, you're not going to win this year, are you? And he says, don't you be worrying, I'm going to crash him on the descent. Now, he didn't mean he was literally going to crash him, but what happened was Sean Kelly went down that descent so fast, he himself fell off on one occasion, but Joop Zoetemelk fell off twice trying to keep up with him and decided he might as well give up the ghost.
Well, Joop absolutely freaked out on that occasion because visibility at stages was down to 5 metres in the fog. And I was in a car and we could not see the riders behind us. We had to come off the road to allow the riders through because we simply didn't know where they were. He certainly took the risk, but the result was, of course, he won the race yet again. and he won it 7 times straight. He's an absolute champion. The last year, 1988, and then came the years of Miguel Indurain. He was a good rider, wasn't he?
He wasn't bad, actually. He went on to win that race at, what's that American chap's name? Lance Armstrong. Yeah. He went on to win that race, I think, on 5 occasions. So he started his career off pretty well in Paris, didn't he, Miguel?
Yes, he won it twice in succession, and it looks as though this race might yet come together, as visibility getting a little bit low now, late afternoon here in Gap in the Alps. And we're doing our little circuit of the Alps before we dive back down to Gap. Headlights are on, and the riders still trying to find the effort just to see the summit here. They are not that far from the top now, 2 kilometres maybe.
That's a very small group. That's a very small group starting to form behind Alex Zuller there. The yellow jersey is in there.
You see the riders drop from this group, but every time our cameras go back, it does appear a lot smaller. But it's now becoming a very, very elitist group as well.
Very select group of riders there with the yellow jersey. Bobby Julich is in that group as well, as is Jens Voigt. It's great to see Alex Zuller riding so well at 35 years of age. I think inspired by the fact that he's quite happy now to be riding on a Swiss team. And I think he'll be a host of information to Tyler Hamilton later on in the season. 1 kilometre to go to the summit. And then by my quick calculations, about 6 kilometres to go to the finish line. The main field are just behind Alex Zuller, who is caught in no man's land.
Yes, well, Alex knows how to suffer. In his days with Hussey, he was an excellent rider. Here we are with the leaders again. Menchoff doing all of the work as he comes up towards the top of the Col de Mons. I have to tell you that Menchoff, he hasn't won many races in his life, but he's known what it's like to win on top of Mont Ventoux, which he did in the Dauphiné back in the year 2002. So he won't be afraid of what the Mons has to offer today.
Won't be scared at all about this climb, and it looks as if he's getting across the gap here, Alex Zuller. There's the leading group of 4, so this is a fabulous ride by Alex Zuller. He's ridden across a gap that at one stage was 30 seconds, and my estimation now would put him around about 10 seconds off the back of the group. If he can make it just before the summit, he's got himself a very good chance, although Alex has never really been one of the great descenders of the sport. But since he's managed to get some special glasses made for him by one of his glasses sponsors, he's managed to keep himself upright an awful lot more than he did in the early part of his career.
Yes, he has been known to fall off occasionally. And here is Alex Zuller now. One big final effort required to join the leaders and hope that they can survive. And I think he's digging just about as deep as he can go right now, Alex Zuller. But it's good to see him in front of our television cameras again. It's been a while.
Looking around the corner, there's the leading group of 4. Denny Menchoff, Dave Brylance. Floyd Landis, Phil, has got a very good chance of getting himself the win here this afternoon. And in that group as well, the very aggressive orange jerseyed Sammy Sanchez. Another move coming off the front end of the main field. And once again, it's the yellow jersey himself, Jorg Yachts, controlling the front end of the peloton. I think this might be a move by Frank Vandenbroeke. That's why the yellow jerseys responded. Frank Vandenbroeke, the bad boy of the sport of professional cycling, has decided to try and challenge the overall leader.
Then there will be a reaction, I think, coming at 10 kilometres to go. We're hitting the snow line, not far to the summit itself now of the climb. This is Menchoff doing the majority of the work, I think, just now. And it would probably help his teammate, Osa, if he takes the points at the top of the climb, because it means they've kept them in the bank, really. And here comes Frank Vandenbroeke, hotly pursued by the Maillot Jaune, Yatska. And they're both going to come up to Alex Zuller, and I don't think they're going to wait for him, because look at the way Vandenbroeke is building up for the pass. He's going to keep the pressure on. I don't think Alex can lift his speed here. But the yellow jersey, how attentive is he? He's got this race nicely under control.
Nicely under control. He's got to stay in contact here with Frank Vandenbroeke as they go under the King of the Mountains points. They take a nice little turn at the top, and they get a chance just to breathe for a few seconds as they begin the descent. Zuller just going round there in third position at the front end of the main field, but you can see how much damage that acceleration of Frank Vandenbroeke has done to the group.
Now, what's he going to do on the descent? Because he's going to test another skill here, going down the mountain now. That will be the big test for him as our descent now commences.
Sammy Sanchez is going down this descent pretty well too. The motorbike, in fact, cannot get away from him. and he's using the motorbike a little bit. It's the motorbike's responsibility to get out of the way of the bike riders, and on the straighter part of the course he can accelerate and manage to open up a gap between himself and the other riders. But that was a very good beginning of the descent there for Sammy Sanchez. Now Vandenbroucke, he's going to take a few risks on this descent. This is a big chance for Frank Vandenbroucke. He could move up in the overall classification and maybe find himself moving up to second if he can just slip away from David Rebellin.
It's the last big chance too for Jatske to show us his new skill. He's going to have to hang on, not take too many chances going down here. These are dangerous moments for a leader of the Tour. He hasn't made a mistake yet. The snow line getting thinner and thinner as we drop down to warmer climbs, but Frank Vandenbroucke has his own plan today. He's going to push on down to the bottom, round about 8 kilometers to race now as they drop back towards Gap. They know what the finishing line approach is like. They've done it once, and Jatske was the first there, don't forget, but a little bit of work to be done to pick up the leaders now.
Well, if anybody thought Jorg Jaks was going to crack towards the end of this year's Pyrenees, I think this is a demonstration that he is still very attentive. He's still got a lot of power in those legs, although his team now are looking just a little bit ragged on the descent down here into Gap. It's left all up to the yellow jersey to take the responsibility of nailing them down. Coming across the Gap, I just a few moments ago saw the green jersey of David Rebellin. He too needs to keep himself up at the front end of the bike race to hold on to second.
Well, Frank Vandenbroucke driving all the time, no help required from Jatske. None will be given either as they group up a little bit behind.
Somebody's disappeared from this group here. I can't see, in fact, Dave Broyland's in the group. There are 3 riders. Floyd Landis is in first place, Sammy Sanchez second, Denny Menchov. So I think, in fact, on this descent, Dave Broyland, so there he is. He's disappeared, but he's going to take a few risks to get himself back into contact.
Hold the braking till as late as you can. It's a nasty bend, this one.
I think that's why we saw him disappear off the front end of that group, because he's not gone into that corner with a very nice line. This is Frank Vandenbroucke.
And there's Rebellin. You're right, Paul. He's come across, so he saved his green jersey at the moment. At least it's high place overall.
Just see how slippery this descent is as they pick their way around there. But the yellow jersey completely in control of this counter-attack by Frank Vandenbroucke. And in fact, they might be opening up a bit of time over everybody else, because George Hincapie, who starts the day in 4th place in the overall classification, is just a little bit off the mark, and I think Hincapie is in this group.
Well, he had 58 seconds to make up at the start of this circuit. Our cameras never showed him coming back. I haven't seen him, but we'll check him out when he gets up to the line. As we're looking now at the leaders here, and Frank Vandenbroucke doing all of the work, trying desperately now to break away, but really there's not a lot of point anymore, is there? Because he's taking the top 2 men with him and they're not working.
Well, they won't work at all, but Frank Vandenbroucke, I think, just trying to move himself higher up into the top 10 now. He was a bit upset the other day when on the road where Alexander Vinokourov got himself a very nice stage victory. He lost around about 20 seconds, which dropped him down from 4th to 8th in the overall classification. I've got a funny feeling they identified Michael Rogers in this group. Now, he's been fairly quiet since the start of the race, and he too is the leading best young rider, and I think a rider we need to follow over the next couple of years, because he's seriously going to be a major talent in the sport of professional cycling.
Well, 20 seconds is quite frankly nothing at this stage of the race as we run down towards the finish to the 3 leaders. Rebellin also not helping. That could well be Michael Rogers down there. Certainly got a style like him. And Kim Kirken, the Luxembourger, is also continuing to develop into quite a good bike rider. Here we go, up at the front again. We're now getting lower down from the snow-capped mountains around us of the Alps.
This is pretty funny, because from being off the back end of the group, Dave Brylance now is trying to move off the front end of this group of 4 riders. Floyd Landis just sitting at the back. We're approaching 5 kilometers to go, and they're on the rather easier section of the course as they go through the official 5-kilometer banner. Landis, I would say, Phil, has got a very good chance of getting himself the win here if this group stays off the front end of the field. This is a great move here by the man in the yellow jersey, because he will be opening up his time advantage on almost everybody else in the race except for David Rebellin.
That board's probably 5 kilometers to go. We've just gone by there. And Jorg Jatske is flying the flag for CSC. Could be a big victory for them here. And now is that Zuller come back on? Didn't look like him, to be honest. He looked a bit too bit wider than average. Oh, might be.
Could well have been Pereira just killing himself back in there. It's difficult to see from this altitude as we look down, and these riders just picking their way around. Now, this is a pretty serious move. They've got, oh, somebody's gone down there in the corner. I didn't see who that was. 2 riders have gone down just in the left-hand side.
Ouch. And that was an Euskaltel-Euskadi rider who's fallen. They look okay. The other one's gone to retrieve his bicycle, I think. His bike's on the floor there, in fact.
Just to show this is a very tricky descent. You've got to be so careful in the early part of the year. If you just touch the brakes, you can find yourself slipping away quite rapidly.
He's
It's an Alessio rider sitting at the side of the road there. The Dr. Gerard Port won't be too far away from him.
Now that was a nasty tumble for him, I think. A little bit damp on the surface. You can't afford to take too many chances coming down.
Sammy Sanchez now opening the gap on the leading group of 4. He's a great descender, Sammy Sanchez. He's taking a very good line around these corners and taking advantage of the fact that Dave Brylance is not taking the right line into many of these corners. There's a big gap now. This is important with about 4 kilometers to go. He's got himself about 25 meters over the chasing trio.
And Jörg Jatzke not worried about what's happening in front, just worried about keeping control of Frank van den Broeke, who's really trying to rip them apart on the way down. Nobody helping him. He's just kept the pressures on. He's dangling about 20 seconds off the possibility of winning the stage. As we now continue on this is very, very typical road in this region of France. Narrow, sinuous, damp at this time of the year, and then you hit a main road for the final run-in, and that's what's happening here. I'm not sure whether that was 4 or 3 kilometers to go.
Well, Sammy Sanchez now has got the gap. It's Denny Menchov making the effort on the front end. You see that flick of the elbow there. He wants Floyd Landis to come by and take up the pacemaking too. Defensive role for the yellow jersey now, Phil. He looks across there to see David Rebellin. He knows that he is his closest challenger, but what he is doing is he's actually consolidating his lead at the front end of the main field, and that was Alex Zuller who came across.
Well done, Alex. Not a great descender, but he's shown us he can do anything when he's on good form. So we've got Alex Zuller now in that group as well, and this looks like another go here. Is it by Brylance once again? No, it's still Sanchez, is still clear. Big effort this by Sanchez, and it will have caught the riders a little bit off guard, I think. They wouldn't have expected him to do this.
Good move. He's looking down there to see if he can see any shadows of riders coming up to him. Number 71, the leader of Euskaltel Euskadi. He's got a slight advantage over the 3 chasers as they charge into town, and this is the second time they've come into gap. And just behind him, Floyd Landis, Phil, must be thinking, I've got to start working with these other guys with me, because I feel Floyd Landis has got a very good chance of getting himself the win, Phil, if this all comes back together.
Well, Sanchez has never won a bike race. He's been a pro now. This is his 4th season. But he got a great result in Liège-Bastogne-Liège last year. He was 6th. Floyd Landis working very hard as they disappear briefly under the railway bridge, and a huge effort here by Landis. Almost closed the gap on his own. He's now looking over his shoulder saying, give us a hand, I think.
He has to nail it back if he wants it to go down to the sprint, and this is the moment. It's a psychological moment, and everybody's just holding back, thinking about saving a small amount of energy for the sprint, and Sammy Sanchez will hope that these guys will start to watch each other just that little bit more. As he comes into town, he keeps looking up the road to see if he's going to see the 1 kilometer banner, and there it is. 1,500 meters for him, and that's going to take him around about 2 minutes. He's looking under his arm there to see where are the rest of this bike race.
Well, for a man who's never won a bike race as a pro, he is not they're right on him. It looks like Brylance is now taken up the running here as they head toward the 1,000 meters to go. They're under it, and they're going to catch him at 800 meters. Brylance will be first to him. Now this surely is putting Landis in a very good position there, because he's got just had minutes to recover from that huge effort he's made. Here's the second group, and their strength, and there looks like George Hincapie is here. Well, so Hincapie has come up to this group as well.
Good move by George Hincapie. They're only about 15-20 seconds behind the leading group of 4. The winner will come from the leading group of 4, but Hincapie, riding himself back into this race, Phil, has managed to get himself once again into the group of the yellow jersey. I think Bobby Julich was actually missing. Now Denny Menchov winding up the sprint there in second position, chasing himself up to the wheel of Dave Brylance, and I think Floyd Landis is in an ideal position in 3rd.
Well, Menchov here has got 2nd, Landis is 3rd. Sanchez surely can have nothing left. Brylance, we believe, can't hold the sprint, not from that far out. It's going to be Landis or Menchov, and here they come. Menchov going now. Now, has Floyd got anything left? Oh, and he got a little bit of a sandwich there, and a click too off the other Spanish rider, and it's given the victory to Denny Menchov. Sanchez in 2nd, Landis 3rd, Brylance 4th.
Landis had a mechanical incident there, Phil. In fact, his chain came off. This is the sprint now for 5th place. George Hincapie at the front there, opening up the gas. He's trying to get himself across the line there. He just sits up as they come to the line. Looks like Kim Kirchen coming through as well. In that group as well is Frank van den Broeke, but there is the rest of the group not too far behind, and David Rebellin, ever present, is going to stay just in front of the yellow jersey Jörg Jatzke.
and the yellow jersey and the green jersey and George Hincapie all getting that same time, about 5 seconds or so, I think it was. Not a big time gap at the end of the day, was it, as the race continues to line now.
This group here is rather interesting to see there, because in that group was Jens Voigt and Bobby Julich. So CSC today, Phil, losing a little bit of a stranglehold on the front end of the main race. Now then, just have a look there in third position. You can see the chain of Floyd Landis just wobbling around there. I think it may well be that he stripped a sprocket or something, but that doesn't take away anything from the fact that Denis Menchov gets the win. And I don't think that incident would have affected the outcome of the race.
Well, he doesn't win many races. That's only the 4th of his career, which began 4 seasons ago. And if you include the overall classification of the Tour de l'Avenir, where he didn't win a stage, he doesn't win many actual races, does he? But Denis Menchov getting the victory, and the first 4 riders there in the same time. 24 seconds later, Kim Kirken does lead them home in 5th place ahead of Van den Broeke, and Oscar Pereiro completing the top 10. So, victory for the Balearic Islands, the new team on the block, and they'll be happy with the result like this in Paris-Nice. They've got the right colour jersey on as well, as we used to call this the race of the snows to the sun. Overall, things are looking good for Jorgatsky, though, because he's now 14 seconds up on Rebellin. Julich holds on to 3rd, but falls back in time to 42. So too Voigt, who holds on to 4th place. But it is looking very, very good here for the riders from CSC. And I have to say today, if there was any lingering doubts about this man controlling this race, they should have been swept away. He's still in charge. Well, 2 days to go and some 330 kilometres remaining as the Paris-Nice now continues from Digne-les-Bains to Cannes. And this will be a ride of around about 185 kilometres. It's all downhill.
All downhill, apart from the few climbs along the route, and the riders now facing up to what is going to be a very difficult Col du Tanneron. And I think we could see some attacks coming on the slopes of this climb as they drop down into Cannes after that. A long stage, 186 kilometres. Today's stage really, I think, Phil, dominated by the news that 3 of Jorgats's teammates did not start this morning. Michael Blaudsen, Jakob Peel and Michele Bartoli. And in fact, we're also hearing that Frank Schleck, although he's still in the race, has been not feeling too good. And I think that might be the first time we get the chance to see that they really are under pressure.
Well, the breakaway going away here. That's David Moncucci on the front.
Eric Decker on the left-hand side. In fact, these riders are about to get picked up there, and Inigo Landeluz is the rider from Euskaltel-Euskadi. The front end of the main field, though, Phil, they're looking very nervous as they line up now towards the ascent of the Col du Tanneron, which, as always at this time of the year, is completely yellow and covered in the mimosa flowers.
I have to say, on the years I've covered Paris-Nice, this is my favourite stage when we go into this area around the Alpes Maritimes. The mimosa bush, which is these beautiful yellow flowers, we often see the riders cutting them and putting them on the saddles, and the same with the press, because it's the arrival of summer for many of them. They've had the cold journey from Paris. We're now on the Côte d'Azur, and this is why we have the race to the sun. It's a very narrow climb, the Côte du Tanneron, and a very, very dangerous descent, but the weather today is quite good.
CSC on the front end of the main field, they really have been caught out by some kind of strange illness that struck out 3 of their big contenders at the start of the day, which puts a lot of responsibility onto the shoulders of Irvan Basso, Jens Voigt and Bobby Julich. Just 2 days to go, and just 2 days to count off the race Bible for Jorgats, and it will be quite a remarkable achievement if he's able to hold on right from day 1 up until the very end. He'll be waiting now, I think, Phil, for the next few kilometres to see if there are going to be any attacks. There is David Rebellin on the right-hand side in the green jersey. This is a good stage for David Rebellin to make a move.
Well, they may have lost 3 of their teammates, CSC, but the rest of the pack are driving at the front to keep Jatska hopefully in a position to win this race tomorrow. It's far from certain. Still seconds blanketing the leaderboard, and that's most unusual at this stage of Paris-Nice.
Mario Ertz at the back there for T-Mobile. He's had a fairly quiet Paris-Nice here, which is completely different to his teammate Alexander Vinokourov, who came here after winning this race for 2 straight years, looking to try and make it 3 in a row, but lost 5 1/4 minutes on the first day out on the open road. He too will be looking to try and move himself up for the possibility of an attack as we get closer to this climb. Anybody who goes over the top of this climb with a 15 to 20 second advantage has got a very good chance of holding it all the way down to the finish.
Well, I've seen this area in the sun, in the snow, in the fog and in the rain. But today it is a very nice day to climb the Col de Tanneron. And David Rebellin knows he's running out to improve on what would be. He finished third in this race last year. He's lying second now, and the win would be very sweet. But he's going to have to find something special, and I think also take a few risks on the way down to the finish line today.
I think Floyd Landis might be looking for the move again here, because I've seen Yaroslav Ekimov riding very much to the front end of this group, trying to keep the US Postal Boys in the front end of the main field. You know, if there's a possibility of George Hincapie getting out a time bonus at the end of today's stage, he could steal third place away from Bobby Julich in this race. On the front, doing a lot of work there is Jens Voigt. Bobby Julich today riding very unselfishly there, just on the shoulder of Jens Voigt. These boys have got to do everything for the next 31 kilometres and one more stage, with the hope of giving the win to their man Jorg Yats, who already this year has had incredible success with an overall win in the Tour of the Mediterranean.
Well, it's the win and nothing else will do. That was David Zabriskie of the USA, sitting last man on the peloton at the moment, in the hot seat as it were. Julich riding strongly at the front for one reason now, to win the race for his teammate Jorg Yatska, his third place. It doesn't matter, it's get the win, that's what people will remember, and it will be a great ride for the team.
Well, Bobby Julich, I don't think I've seen him ride this well, Phil, for the last few years, and he seems to be a lot happier now that he's moved across to this CSC team. They've done a lot of training and preparation during the winter months, a lot of it done on the island of Lanzarote, where Bjarne Riis has been going for many, many years, and I think it's actually started to pay off. Jens Voigt is looking exceptionally strong. This is Frank Schleck on the front here. He's reportedly not too good either at the start of this morning stage, but it's good to see that he's still in the race. Voigt moving up into second position. No challenges coming for the moment, but I think as we get closer to the summit, this is when the Col de Tanneron really starts to kick in.
David Rebellin, you can pick him out in that green jersey, sitting about 7 or 8 men back just now. Pressure staying on. This is an absolutely normal tactic from the teammates of the leader of the race. They do all of the work on the front, try to hold the pace high to stop the counter-attacks coming until their strength goes away from them. And it's a lovely twisty climb this. It's absolutely lovely climb as you make your way up. Road surface is good. Hardly a straight road on the Tanneron, and the same has to be said on the way down, of course.
It's a light blue jersey in about 5th position there. That's Michael Rogers, the leading young rider. There he is on the left-hand side. He's had a very good Pyrenees, very solid, after putting in a very good individual time trial at the start. He's remained at the front end of this bike race since we left Paris, and that was 7 days ago now. He's a rider I think, Phil, we're going to see an awful lot more of over the next couple of years.
Yes, Michael Rogers voted Australian Cyclist of the Year last year. What a great season he had too. 5 wins, which included the overall the Tour of Belgium, overall in the Tour of Germany, and the overall in the Route du Sud. So he is special. Now we've got an attack going away here.
One of the new teams on the block, the RATT team. It's a very small team, and didn't quite glimpse who was trying to get himself off the front end of the main field. But I don't think they're given that much of a chance to go completely off the front end of the peloton. In fact, this is Yann Le Boulanger who's managed to get himself off the front end of the group. I've got a funny feeling though they'll pick up the pace, because this is a very strategic stage here.
I always find it quite amazing. Here we have a French team sponsored by a British car manufacturer, and the same car manufacturer won't touch cycling in Britain. I always find that quite unusual.
Bit bizarre. Bizarre, absolutely, but this young man doesn't know anything about the politics of the decision to sponsor a sport in the French culture, but he's right now trying to steal a marge over the rest of the main field. Everybody is very nervous at the front end of the main field, because most of these riders just know how dangerous and difficult the descent of the Col de Tanneron can be. Now on the front end of the group there, it's T-Mobile. A bit too far to see. It looks a little bit like the shape of Alexander Vinokourov, but I don't think he would be setting the pace on this climb. I would think he would be sitting a little bit further back in 7th or 8th position.
Well, he had his big day a couple of days ago when he got the stage. And King of the Mountains, first time we've seen him in the polka dot leaders jersey here, Osa. His got the lead in. Now, where is he? At the back or gangling off the front? He was going backwards. Now, he must be feeling the effort of yesterday.
I think he's paid for those efforts, but that's not what's important to him. He got himself a couple of points out on the early part of the stage to consolidate his lead in that King of the Mountains classification. And right now, he's just going to survive on his way down towards the finish line.
And the FDJ rider going off the back here too is Carlos da Cruz, the Frenchman. We've lost the leader of the team, well, I suppose the sort of leader, Baden Cook. He left us very early on. Rudy Kemner, champion of Holland. Not the best climb in the world.
With a picture break up, Didier Roos, the French national champion, going out to the back end of the group. Wrong way around, red at the top.
Yeah.
Anyway, you can see a lot of riders in serious difficulty here because of the acceleration on the front end of the main field, and still the majority of the pacemaking and the work is being done by CSC, and Bobby Julich doing a sterling job for the team and for his leader, George Yats, who is there in about 5th position. No threat at all right now, as he sits quite comfortably at the front end of the main peloton. And again, you can see as soon as we get to a difficult part of this course here in Paris-Nice, you can see riders starting to slip away, and it's Kessler on the front who's doing the pacemaking.
See, it's a familiar pattern here, Paul. We're seeing again, it's a war of attrition as the pace just sheds the riders at the back. Just look at this at the back of the race now. Riders being dropped off, but there's no physically hard attacking coming at the front of the peloton.
Everybody's been worn down by the attrition. That looks like Victor Hugo Peña going out to the back of the group as well for US Postal Service. George Hincapie is at the front end of the group with Floyd Landis, and Yatislav Ekimov, who seems to be riding better and better.
Right, dropping away, that was Wilfred Kretskins, the Belgian rider on the Quick-Step De Vietemont team, also calling it a day. This hill is really biting some of those legs today as they continue their ride towards the summit.
Fabian Cancellara, a bit of a surprise to see him going off the back end of the group, because he's a man who I would say has got a very good chance of winning a stage like this here at Paris-Nice. And you can just see what sort of damage is being done on the front end of the main field. Mario Ertz as well for T-Mobile. He too shouldn't really be getting dropped on a climb like this.
Yeah, he's in the company there, the former champion of Switzerland, Daniel Schneider. And it's T-Mobile who seem to have themselves a plan today and are driving this race at the front. And I don't think CSC will be very unhappy about this. They found themselves some strange allies from Germany to keep the pace together. Yatska is riding there, looking at everybody, and he just took a double take there because the man coming through on the inside is his arch rival Rebellin. While he looks at Rebellin, we start to move off the front here with Chocolat Jacques. Is that Brylance again? It is.
Dave Brylance. He said he was going to go out and race the last 3 days of this year's Paris-Nice, go for the win on every single occasion that he could. Now, this is a good move by him. He's not one of the great descenders, so if he can get himself a 30-40 second advantage before the top, he should be able to conserve the majority of that on the descent of the Col de Tanneron, which is not the old descent of the Col de Tanneron, which used to go down into Mont de Lieu, a very dangerous descent, but still, it's a pretty tricky descent from the top of the Tanneron down towards the roads of Cannes.
These are superb roads down the Côte d'Azur, for cycling just for the sheer pleasure of the countryside. The hills, if you don't have to race them, well, they're not that hard. They are very pleasant undulations, but at these sort of speeds, I would think they're quite hard.
Starts to bite once you get up to the top 2 or 3 kilometers to go, and you can see how long that main field has been stretched out, and that's all to do with the work that's being done by T-Mobile on the front. I wonder if they're trying to set something up for Alexander Vinokourov, who I did see sitting in the top 10 or 15 places, but I think we're looking for a big showdown as well. And the difficult thing about the Col de Tanneron is, in fact, we haven't really started to kick up just yet. There's the yellow mimosa on the left-hand side, absolutely beautiful at this time of the year, as Dave Brylance has leapt off the front end of the main field, and he's got about a 10-second advantage over the peloton.
First flowers of spring, a big cycling season just around the corner now, and 15 miles or so to go to the finish for Dave Brylance, but the reaction is coming. They're after him. He's not being given a chance here to get away from it. He's realised it, I think. He's going to wait and see now what develops.
See who's coming across there. Looks like it's CSC, that's Jens Voigt controlling the affairs. They don't want any small breakaways off the front end of this group. I think that's Matthias Kessler as well from T-Mobile moving up into 3rd position. But in about 5th place, the yellow jersey Phil is still looking very comfortable. Nobody yet has managed to break the stranglehold that this man has had on this bike race since day 1 in Paris in that 13.2 kilometer individual time trial. race hasn't really started to kick up. There's still a couple of kilometres before it really does start to get that little bit more grippy. And I think we'll see a few more attacks coming, because everybody realises now their chance to beat Jörg Yats in this year's Paris-Nice is slowly but surely ticking away.
Meanwhile, at our second camera, this is what it's like at the back of the race here. You've got to really keep attention and look where you're going around these corners. You probably heard the shout from this rider as he just came past the motorbike. Reintegrated into the peloton, he'll be happy about that, taking advantage of what is only a short descent at the moment.
Brylant is still in the driving seat at the front end of the main field. Right on his wheel, Jens Voigt. Voigt won't try and pick up any pace-making here. All he wants to do is just try and make sure that it's nice and safe on this descent, which is in the middle part of the climb of the Col de Tanneron. From the summit of the Col de Tanneron down to the finish is around about 15 kilometres. It's ideally positioned for a man who's got the form to jump away and try and get himself the individual victory. But the difficult part about the run-in is that the last 5 kilometres you are absolutely buffeted by the winds coming in off the Mediterranean as you go along the coast into the centre of Cannes.
These corners are sharp and the roads are narrow. These are not the high mountains of France. These are in the region of the Alpes Maritimes, the mountains, the undulations which hang above the Mediterranean Ocean. But they are probably the best racing roads in the south of France here. They also have a triathlon in this area as well.
Michael Rogers in the middle there in the blue jersey, currently lying in 8th place in the overall classification, but there's a move coming off the front, and this is Alexander Vinokourov.
Well, it's a familiar place for him to attack. Give him a little rise, give him the front of the peloton, and he'll see what happens, and here he goes.
Well, the rider from Kazakhstan, last year's winner of Paris-Nice and the winner the year before that, so far has got one stage victory under his belt, and I wouldn't think right now CSC really need to chase him down because he's so far down in the overall classification. He's not really a problem to anybody. They really need to ride on the defensive. Just keep an eye on one man, and that man is David Rebellin, who's wearing the green jersey as the leader of the points classification.
Well, you're right, there's no real reaction from the yellow jersey yet. Somebody, I think, has gone across that gap to try and bridge it to Vinokourov.
Brylant.
Dave Brylant, who's gone across. And now he'll take a lot of encouragement here because he knows that Vinokourov is an opportunist, and this is an absolutely typical move by Alexander. And Brylant has read it well. He's joined him.
Well, this is like Leipheimer going out as well. He's been pretty frisky over the last couple of days, and one of the riders from Euskaltel-Euskadi there. It looks as if CSC are deciding to let all these lesser riders, can't really call Levi Leipheimer and Vinokourov lesser riders, but in the overall classification of Paris-Nice this year they are. They're just allowing them to go off the front one at a time. And quick glimpse there, that man on the motorbike, by the way, that was Laurent Jalabert. He's working for French television. I think he's going up these hills an awful lot easier than he used to.
Jalabert won this race 3 times straight, and that was a fantastic bike rider. He won it in 95, 96 and 1997, and no French rider has ever won it since.
This is Sammy Sanchez again, number 71. He's not going to wait for anybody. He's trying to go up through the inside. There was hardly a gap there, and he just goes straight by Bryland's shoulders. And shoulders, strangely enough, Phil, these are the same guys who were actually out on the attack yesterday. Sammy Sanchez, Dave Bryland, maybe not Alexander Vinokourov, but certainly this man was looking for the win yesterday.
Sanchez rode very, very well yesterday. He still hasn't won a bike race, though, as close as he came yesterday to the victory. Caught inside the kilometre to go. Maybe today will shine better on him, because certainly this is Zuller again, is it? And certainly the sun has come out now, and the riders are warming to the occasion. Spring is put over the hill, boys.
And the winner of yesterday's stage 2, Denny Menchov, also looking pretty good. It's quite interesting to see at the end of Paris-Nice here, Phil, the guys out on the attack are exactly the same names that we were talking about yesterday. Sammy Sanchez, though, has got himself a pretty serious gap now. He doesn't want any company, but it looks as if Alexander Vinokourov has recovered from that little counter-attack and is slowly clawing his way to the wheel of the champion rider from the Euskaltel-Euskadi team, the leader, Sammy Sanchez.
While they continue to fight each other, they're going to pull away from the field. CSC have still got the men they want by the side. This Sanchez just up the road, and again a little count-out. Zuller, and this is the man now. Zuller finding his legs, I think, this year.
Former winner of Paris-Nice as well, Alex Zuller, and he would love to try and get himself a stage victory here. Wearing number 1 as last year's winner, Alexander Vinokourov. now taking a bit more of a defensive role, and there's Levi Leipheimer there wearing number 11. Now this is a very good group, a group of around about 6 riders, but their advantage over the main peloton is not very much more than 5 or 6 seconds.
The hill is becoming a little bit more of a problem just now. You get some idea of the angle here. Alex Zülle, 1993 was the year he won Paris-Nice. Drives the little group on, 6 men clear. Police have got themselves in between, that's a good sign. Here comes the big peloton, all under the control of CSC, and things going according to plan, as Jörg Jatzke is now thinking of his final 24 hours in that leader's jersey.
Just ticking away the kilometres as he gets closer and closer to Nice, and once he's got to Cannes at the end of today's stage, I would think he would start to feel a very calm man. But tomorrow's stage, Phil, is a difficult stage to digest. There are 5 big first category climbs, and 3 of those are the ascensions of the Col d'Ez, and that's a pretty tall order for the last day of racing.
Now Fassa Bortolo again livening up affairs here. Is Frank Vandenbroucke going to try and take a little bit more time today? He's obviously finishing this tour feeling very, very strongly. Could be Kim Kirken who's setting the pace here on the front and driving on.
Kim Kirken having a very good Paris-Nice here this afternoon, but this is not for himself. This is to try and set something up for Frank Vandenbroucke there in second position. You see how attentive Jörg Jatz is. He's right there on his wheel, and so too is David Rebellin. Seconds are all that separate the 2 riders in the top 2 places in the overall classification. That's what they're chasing there. Alex Zülle, Alexander Vinokourov, Sammy Sanchez, and they're starting to nail back the gap pretty smartly.
Well, that's a huge effort by Kirken, the Luxembourger on the Fassa Bortolo team. He's doing a nice little job too for the yellow jersey, Jatzke, because he's coming up locked in to the group that's chasing down this breakaway. Alex taking a drink. I think he's resigned to the capture here. I really thought when Alexander Vinokourov launched that attack it was curtains for the day, but it looks as though it's not going to be the case.
Tyler Hamilton at the back of the group there, number 181, riding himself into this Paris-Nice. There was a big question mark 48 hours to go before the start as to whether or not he would actually be participating in Paris-Nice, having been afflicted with a very nasty bronchial problem. But I think now he's riding better as the race progresses. Here's Hincapie.
Yes, and Jose Acevedo setting the pace for US Postal right on the front there, trying to put George Hincapie back in. Looks as though George has had a little bit of a rough ride on this climb, and Acevedo trying to put matters to rights for him.
Floyd Landis a bit further up. That's Laurent Brochard on the back there, the former world champion from the San Sebastian World Championships. And they still haven't managed to completely close down this move. It looks like Menchov has decided to go out on his own, but he really doesn't have that much of an advantage. Sammy Sanchez once again in the orange jersey of Euskaltel Euskadi. They've actually just been caught there by the charge from Kim Kirken and VDB, and that's why Sammy Sanchez, Phil, has decided to go out on the front and try and get himself another move. The animators of yesterday's stage are the animators of today's as well. 186 kilometres from Digne-les-Bains to Cannes, and we've still got a couple of kilometres to go to the top of this climb.
Desperate moments these. We're inside the last 500 metres of the climb here, and these 2 riders now are still clear, but there's a real gaggle of chasers right up behind them, and it's just the mounting points, I think, now, because the peloton could well regroup on the descent. Sanchez doing all of the attacking and riding superbly right now to try and give Euskaltel Euskadi something out of this race. Here's a final kick from him as he races towards the summit, and there's a nice little group forming behind, led by the Maillot Jaune.
Moses being buffeted around by the wind there, coming down from the helicopter. Oh, that's a nasty little move.
Well, that was really dangerous. Not intentional, but lucky somebody didn't come down there.
Jörg Jatz taking up the responsibility now to close down. Let's have a look at this one more time. Just moving across the road there. It wasn't a nasty or intentional move, but hats off to the motorbike rider.
Absolutely.
Too. This is
Nobody
VDB.
blamed anybody there, but there was great reaction from the riders.
VDB going out on the attack. He's going to try now and see if he can put the yellow jersey under a bit of pressure. He's a great bike rider, you know, Frank Vandenbroucke. He was the cross-country champion of Belgium when he was 11 years old. He's had a very strange career over the last few seasons, but this is his very last chance of coming back up to the top, and he's actually opened the gap over the yellow jersey. This could be the move to put Jörg Jatz into difficulties.
The Jatz will do well not to panic here. We're almost at the top of the climb, but then again, as yesterday, there he is. I think that was the line there, yesterday. He was not good on the descent, Frank, and Yatska has got his eye on him from afar, but not that far, as they now start their way down towards the finishing line. It's a case of deja vu for Frankie van den Broeke on the way down.
Well, Frank van den Broeke, when he gets his head into a situation of wanting to try and go out and get the win, he can go down hills pretty fast. Again, Sammy Sanchez has decided he wants to go out on the attack. I would say CSC need to just gather their forces, wait and see if they've got a lot of riders left in the group. There should be Bobby Julich in this group. There should be Jens Voigt and Ivan Basso, and those riders shouldn't panic at all. They should just allow themselves to try and close down this gap sensibly. Now, van den Broeke is about to get company there from Sammy Sanchez, and they're not that far off the front end of the group.
Well, this is going to be a tortuous descent now for our television camera bike, as well as the riders, I would think. I've always admired the TV cameramen out there looking through a small lens at pictures in black and white and not knowing where the pilot of that motorbike is going next, because they're very brave men, believe me, and none braver than on this descent, because it really does twist.
Very technical descent. Van den Broeke now being joined by Sammy Sanchez. Sanchez is proving to be quite an aggressive bike rider over the last couple of days. And he goes right through on the inside of van den Broeke there. He's going to offer the Belgian a small amount of assistance, and he accelerates into these corners. He's got a very nice position. This is what it looks like at the back of the group. This is Dave Brylant at the back, and he was the man who really started all the aggression on the other side of this climb, the Col du Tanneron.
Between 70 and 80 kilometers an hour on this sort of a descent, and brake late, get round those corners, hope you know where the corner is going to. Sanchez, remarkable, actually moving clear here. He's really taking one or two risks, the only working overtime to keep him upright. And looking down at the bunch there, the chase back is working well. CSC have control just for now, and Rebellin also doing well. There's a few reminders of the previous winners of this event. Vinokourov for the past 2 years. Frigo was in this race, he's not now. Andreas Kloden got a great win, never really developed from that in 2000. He went on, of course, to take a medal in the Olympic Games that year.
Frank van den Broeke in second position there. He's having a hard time here staying on the wheel of Sammy Sanchez, who's going down this hill like a bullet. He's cutting a very nice line around the corners, and he's getting into the apexes nicely. He's not losing any momentum at all. Van den Broek's having to take quite a few risks to try and stay in contact. The fact is, he's not actually right off the wheel. This is a fabulous
This is
descent.
a nervous descent, Paul.
As you said, well, I get very excited on the descents, Phil. I used to love going downhill fast. That's about the best thing there is about bike riding. Not very good at going up them, but I tell you what, I really enjoy going downhill fast.
It's a special skill, there's no doubt about that. And Sanchez is making this road a lot wider than it appears right now. He's also taking one or two risks. I think it would be nice to see him win the stage, to be honest. It would be his first ever win as a professional cyclist, but he's been a great bike rider. And Frank van den Broeke is really having to work overtime just to keep him in sight on the descent. Sorry about the pictures, but that's due to all these trees now. We'll blame it on the mimosa, I think.
Blame it on the mimosa, Sammy Sanchez, and he's got a gap now, a serious gap between himself and Frank van den Broeke. Van den Broeke will be quite desperate to try and close this gap down. 17 kilometers to go. There is van den Broeke. He really needed to be on the wheel of Sammy Sanchez. If that was the case, the two of them could start to open up a very serious gap over the chasing group, and that would really put the cat amongst the pigeons in that group behind, because Frank van den Broeke, Phil, has got a very good chance here, you know, of causing the surprise on the penultimate day of Paris-Nice and getting himself the lead. Sanchez looking back there, looking back over his shoulder. They're trying to get all of the bikes out of the way here, because this is an absolutely chaotic descent. This man is taking all kinds of risks. He's got a fabulous style. You see how he gets that knee out going into the corner. He really tries to get the center of gravity down as low as possible. He's going around these corners just like a motorbike rider, and as soon as he feels he's starting to slow down, he picks up, he starts the acceleration again, using all of the road here. This is a desperate moment here for Sammy Sanchez.
Got those wide bars of about 44 centimeters, and he's gripping them very tightly at the moment, following the motorbike camera as close as he dare. There's the maillot jaune of Jurgiatski being chased, as he has been for the last week almost now, by the green jersey of David Rebellin. Rebellin hasn't found any opportunity to attack and go for the win. He was third last year, second might be his best bet now. He's running out of time.
big loser in this group, you know, is George Hincapie, who is in 4th place in the overall classification. I've not seen George down this line of riders, and I wonder if his team have been able to pull him back into the fold, because it would be such a shame for him to be so close to the podium position and to lose it with just 2 days to go. Sanchez is on his own now, still on the very tricky technical part of this descent. Look at that knee going out right into the apex of the corner, and he flicks over on his saddle just to switch the gravity right over to the other side. This man is a fabulous descender.
And what about the car and the 2 motorbikes? They're not doing too bad a job themselves, staying clear of this rider. That's the race director's car in the front, trying to keep out of the way, as Sanchez is braking and correcting every second on his way down. He's so quick now. He's given that motorcyclist a dirty look. If looks would kill, he's gone over the top of him now. The bike couldn't go down as fast as this man. I think he probably is one of the best riders from Spain I've ever seen go downhill.
Absolutely magical here. He's only 7 seconds up on Frank Vandenbroucke though, and 15 seconds back to the group of the yellow jersey, Jorgat. And you can see at the back of the yellow jersey group here, Dave Brylance is certainly not enjoying going down the Col de Tanneron at all. He's just taking all kinds of risks, and his lines are so bad. You could see how fluid Sammy Sanchez was. Well, Brylance here is taking all kinds of wrong lines around these corners, but he's still managing to stay just in contact.
He had a good couple of meters there. He closed the gap a little bit. Let's hope he hangs on, because it's all downhill now until we get into camp.
There's Vandenbroucke, not too far behind. I bet he wishes he could just be on the tail of Sammy Sanchez. And he's actually slowly but surely being pulled back there by the yellow jersey, who's now being forced, Phil, to do all of the pacemaking himself. Frank Vandenbroucke, the bad boy of the sport of professional cycling, on his very last chance to prove that he can be a great champion. And he can. He is full of talent, even though he's been a little bit naughty in the past.
Well, he's not making the most of this descent. He really isn't. And he's going to get picked up, I would think, by that chase group. It's a question whether Sammy Sanchez can stay clear. Here comes the Maillot Jaune. He must take no chances now. He's running very close to what would be a great victory for him, the biggest of his career. He's only had 1 win in his life until the time trial the other day. This year's turning out pretty good for Jorjatsky. He had the victory in the Mediterranean. Now he's had the victory in the time trial of this event. Dave Brylance here. Oh dear.
He's not happy with this at all.
I think they've got the catching nets on the left for him.
He just can't get around these corners. Some riders are just not able to, and I think Brylance's problem there is he's sitting just a little bit too high up on the saddle, and he's also sitting a little bit too far forward. In fact, he's taken a very bad light there.
Yes, he wasn't too good.
So did Vandenbroucke too.
Completely off the road there, Dave Brylance, but happily, it's just a question of getting back onto it. Vandenbroucke continues to lose ground to Sanchez. He's out of sight now. Here we can have a look at Dave Brylance, bottom left. Yeah, he's doing a Lance Armstrong there, except he never kept going. He's going to have to get back on when he came off the route.
I think he bottled out there. He just was coming into the corner too quickly, trying to stay in contact with that group. So he may well find himself disappearing from the group because he's not going to catch them on this descent with his descending ability. This man has taken perfect lines around almost every corner. You see that little crafty look across there just to ascertain what the position was of Frank Vandenbroucke. But Vandenbroucke, Phil, is slowly but surely starting to pull himself back. He's taking a few risks going around these corners.
Oh dear. Well,
I
I don't know about you people at home, but we're getting very twitchy in the commentary box here, because these two riders, it's not often we get such great pictures of descenders all the way from top to bottom of the climb, but these two men are taking chances now and will continue to do so as the finish gets closer.
Well, Moto 1, their names just showed up to us there. They're doing a fabulous job of staying in contact with this man. This is the man second on the road, 118, Frank Vandenbroucke. Poursuivant means the chaser. They're now just about to turn left at the end of this road here, and they're on the flat part of the course. And there, just in front, is Sammy Sanchez. Frank Vandenbroucke has almost made the junction. He can reach out and touch Sammy Sanchez. Now, this is going to be pretty important, because if the two of them get together, they've got a good chance now of breaking the stranglehold of Jorg Yachts. And I would think Yachts is now starting to feel a little bit worried, because he won't have any friends in that group.
Race leaders never do, but what's happening now is advantage back to Frankie Vandenbroucke, simply because he's the better time trialist. The descending skills are now past, and we're on the straights, and this man has a lot of speed in those legs, and Sanchez might find he now comes up to him.
It's amazing to think, Phil, Frank Vandenbroucke is 29 years of age. He's been a professional since 1994. This is his 10th year as a pro. Really quite remarkable. In fact, at the time, it was illegal for a rider in Belgium to turn professional under the age of 21. but he was given special permission to turn pro in '94, and he started off with some pretty serious wins. And in fact, in his second year as a professional, he got himself the win in Paris-Brussels. Right now, he's trying to win Paris-Nice for the second time, but to do that, I think he has to make the junction with this man who's taking all kinds of risks.
Kilometre 174, so that puts him 11 or so kilometres from the finishing line. That's a long way to go. He's been here before, just about 24 hours ago. He was in a similar situation, racing at home by himself, and he looks as though he may be opening the gap a little bit.
And Van den Broek was just starting to crack. He needed to be right on the tail of this man as they came off the bottom of that descent. There you can see the green jersey, David Rebellin, Kim Kirken there in second position. He's playing the defensive role. Look at big Jens Voigt powering up there around the outside. This man is a tower of strength. I have to say, I think it was pretty ridiculous of Crédit Agricole to get rid of this man during the winter transfer season, because he is worth 10 men in a situation like this.
He's had a very good Paris-Nice, that's for sure. As Jens now drives on, he's going to pull this man back into the thick of the action by the look of it. 4 seconds to Frank Van den Broek, 16 seconds the peloton to the leader. This could come back together. There's still time. We haven't seen the 10 kilometre to go board yet.
Van den Broek is starting to recover once again. This is a real ding-dong. This is a pursuit match between the man in the front there in the orange jersey, Sami Sanchez of Euskaltel-Euskadi, and Frank Van den Broek. Van den Broek all over his machine, looking very nervous. He's got a lot of pedaling action going there, moving the top off his body around, but it's a hard call to get across to this man, Sami Sanchez, who did the best descent of the Col de Tanneron and now still has the advantage. He was on the attack yesterday and very upset to get across the line in second place. Today, I think he's looking for the win.
And there we are, just over 10 kilometres to go for Samuel Sanchez of Euskaltel-Euskadi. It's still a long way, it's 6 miles, that's what it is, and they're probably going to do just over a minute 20, a minute 30 for those 6 miles.
Oof, I wasn't sure where he was going there.
Neither was I, Paul. He almost clipped that central strip there. He's taking every inch of the road he can find right now. And you can hear the cars clearing the way ahead. And these boys are regrouping and beginning to get themselves organised. This race is now poised.
Well, that's Alex Zuller going to the front there, doing a bit of pacemaking for the CSC riders. Jens Voigt, look at the position there. This man, his body just all over the machine. He's a big, powerful bike rider. He wants to try and pull this race back together if he can. Alex Zuller flicking through these. This run into Cannes is so unbelievably dangerous. All this road furniture here makes it so difficult nowadays for the sport of professional cycling to be out on the open road. The yellow jersey has to remain calm at a moment like this, because after all, Phil, this race is still only separated by a matter of seconds, and the man close to him in the overall classification is just 2 wheels back, David Rebellin.
The adrenaline will be coursing through the veins of Jurgatska at the moment, and Jens Voigt there signalling he was changing direction for all safety concerned. This rider still dodging in and out the median strips and heading down towards the finishing can, choosing the right-hand lane again. Shortest way around is obviously the way to go. And Samuel Sanchez, well, I think we'd love him to win the stage right now, and that looks like the return of Frank Van den Broek. He's looking and deciding which part of the line he should drop into. So there's one man clear now, and there just seems to be about everybody chasing him down, because Alex Zuller has now gone back up to the front of that group.
Well, that was a good move by Frank Van den Broek. He tried. He's the only man who's really tried to get an advantage over the CSC domination of this year's Paris-Nice, and that was a great move by him. If he could have just stayed on the wheel of Sami Sanchez, and that was 2 riders at the front, it might be in a different situation right now. We're inside of 10 kilometres to go. Around about 8 for Alex Zuller on the front end of the group. Jens Voigt getting a bit of respite, but there is the man who today tried to win Paris-Nice for himself for the second time.
You know, it might help Sanchez now. They've caught Van den Broek. He was their target. That's taken the pressure off the CSC boys now quite a lot. This man can't win the race today, and it might help him win the stage. And I think nobody will be too unhappy about that, at least not from this side of the picture anyway.
But Sami Sanchez is not dangerous at all in the overall classification. You see how low the sun is in the sky now. It's very late in the afternoon in this part of the world, as we now look down towards the Mediterranean coast. You should see it in about 3 or 4 kilometres, and then it's the difficult long ride along the seafront into the heart of Cannes. It's a very select group of riders that Col de Tanneron has sorted out this afternoon. It wasn't necessarily just the climb that made this selection, Phil. It was actually a lot to do with the descent.
It's the Baker's dozen. 13 riders in the chase, being led by the rejuvenated Swiss rider here, Alex Züller. CSC have got 3 riders that we know of in this group, and that's just about all the team they've got left in the race, because they shed a few on the road from Paris.
Sammy Sanchez looking over his shoulder now. Oof, this is pretty nasty here. This little incline just inside the 10 kilometers to go is really hurting his legs. It's always tough, you know, when you're a bike rider and you look at the race handbook the day before and you see where the climbs are and you see that it's a flat run into the finish, and all of a sudden the organization kicks this up in front of you. This is Kim Kirchen now taking up the pace.
Well, this is the Luxembourg strongman who's now stamping on those pedals here, trying to close it down, because there's still a chance that Van den Broeke can clean up at the finishing line. They've lost a little bit of ground since they picked up Van den Broeke, and looks like Züller may have gone there, and the gap has gone. That little rise has hurt him. He was sent to the back of the group very, very quickly, but the gap half a minute over the top.
It really was a nasty little incline there. Doesn't seem very much if you're riding along at the end of a nice day out on the open roads, but if you're at the end of a stage of Paris-Nice, 186 kilometers in the saddle, that really felt like a big mountain pass. Züller might just get a chance to get onto the back end of this group. As you can see, Kim Kirchen looking over his shoulder to see what sort of damage they're doing. The lone leader is still holding on to around about 30 seconds over the chasing group. Fingers crossed for him.
I must say it would be a great bonus if the blackboard man used some chalk on that ball, but it can't be much more than 30 seconds right now. As we're looking at the pain on the face of Samuel Sanchez for the second day. In with a shout at winning the stage. Now, he lost yesterday. Maybe the gods will shine a bit better on him today.
The big loser here is 4th place overall, George Hincapie. Just
slipping and
sliding
sliding
there.
there.
He's all over this machine, and very shortly he'll be right alongside the Mediterranean. Number 71 out on the attack yesterday. Caught and just inside the final kilometre, and still managed to hold on for 2nd place on the stage. This is the best way to go about it. Go out on your own and you've got a very good chance of survival. Behind, though, it looks to me as if Kim Kirchen was starting to whip up the pace and try and pull this man back into the fold. It looks as if Alex Zuller's just got himself tagged onto the back too.
Well, we're making our entry now to the playground of the rich French as we race into Cannes, and he's just about hanging in. 25 seconds, they've only pulled 5 seconds back. Kirchen being left to do most of the work. Jens Voigt itching to go and give him a turn, but no need to at the moment. His job now to defend for the race leader.
Got a funny feeling another man missing from the top classification as well, because I didn't see Bobby Julich in this group either, and he may well be in a group a little bit further down the road. This man very shortly, Phil, I could think it must be only about a kilometre or so till he gets to the coast, and that's when it's going to be difficult for him, because the wind always batters in off the Mediterranean on the long straight road alongside the coastline.
And this elite group of chasers have not really given him his head yet, but they're all fully extended, I think. And there's still a good chance that Sanchez will get the win today.
You see Michael Rogers just tagged in at the back of the group there in the light blue jersey, the best young rider in the Paris-Nice, 8th at the start of today. Alex Züller just sitting up to get a bit of breath. Now this is good for Sammy Sanchez. They're turning off the pace, they're turning off the pressure at the front end of the group.
Look at the wind, Paul. Look at the wind hitting those tapes now. And the poor old Samuel Sanchez, and that's Victor, that's Vinokourov. Yes, Vinokourov, who's gone. Do you know, I didn't see him in the line for ages, and here he comes out the front, and he's going alone again.
Well, there's no reaction at the front end of the group. Again, they're not too worried about Alexander Vinokourov, the winner of the last 2 editions of Paris-Nice. And I think everybody now is a little bit on the rivet, and they're probably saying, excuse me, will somebody else come forward and do a bit of the pacemaking, because this man has launched a very serious attack, but he's got to get across a gap of 30 seconds to Sammy Sanchez.
The Mediterranean is on his right shoulder, the Alpes Maritimes is on his left shoulder. He's now going to channel down the middle and head towards the finishing line, but he's taking the wind at the same time. He still has a huge effort here and could be riding here only to 2nd place. But he's had a stage win already, and last year's winner and the year before that has really shown himself in the last few days of this tour.
He's got a great position on the bike now. This is just coming up to the Red Mediterranean now. A left-hand turn around this roundabout, and there it is. They've raced almost 1,200 kilometres to get down to here, but this, Phil, is a very difficult piece of road now. We're looking at around about 4 kilometres to go to the finish line for the leader, and I would say Alexander Vinokourov is around about 15 seconds in arrears.
He's such a strong boy when he gets away from the field, and again, no reason for that group to chase him down, except they could do with winning the stage, perhaps. The old Mediterranean looks a little bit frothy down there today as the wind whips it up. Sanchez now has got to be feeling tired, but let's hope. There's a lovely picture for you as they make the left-hand turn onto the seafront.
Well, there's a regrouping here. It looks as if there's a massive group coming up to the lead group, which was the group of the yellow jersey. I wonder if Hincapie has managed to claw his way back, and of course Bobby Julich as well, who appeared to be missing from that big chase group of the yellow jersey and Jens Voigt.
Well, let's remember Bobby did a huge turn at the base of the climbs today for his team, man. That's behind him now, but I've got a feeling they've come back there.
Well, he's sacrificed himself and hopefully has got himself back into the race. There is the lone leader just in front of that red car. The red car is the car of the race referee. This man is probably 10 seconds in arrears, and he's slowly but surely eating his way forward to Sammy Sanchez, who attacked on the descent of the Col de Tanneron. There, I think, is George Hincapie. Good to see him getting himself back into this race, and a lot of the help there came from the new boy, Jose Acevedo, who I think is going to be a good replacement for US Postal later in the season.
So that field more or less coming back together now. Might lose a little bit of its impetus because the day's battle has come to naught again. Jörg Jatzky is heading for another yellow jersey in this race, providing he makes no mistakes in the next few minutes. And the field reshuffling the pack, and Phonak look as though they're going to make a little bit of pace-making, but I'll guarantee now they're not going to catch the two boys up front. They just have lost the drive there. These are the hands of the man who's been an absolute hero this past 24 hours, and today deserves the victory. But you know, it might be denied him because Vinokurov is coming up so quickly. There's still plenty of time left.
Look at the difference in these two riders. Sanchez riding right over to the right-hand side. He's eating the majority of the wind right into his face here, which is coming right in off the Mediterranean. On the other hand, Alexander Vinokurov was riding right up against the wall, trying to get as much shelter as he could from the wind, which is buffeting both of these riders. Sanchez, a very upright position of a man who is better suited as a climber, is slowly being approached by Alexander Vinokurov, who looks exceptionally strong at the end of this year's Paris-Nice.
Doesn't seem to have the build of a big Tour de France rider, does he? The way he's crouching now, he's more like one of these beefed up sprinters. But third in the Tour de France for Alexander last year, and here comes the catch now. Two riders together. Take a look down the road. You'll see the headlights of this group. So they're spread over, I would say, a little more than 30 seconds, and there goes in a counter-attack. And immediately at the front comes the attack, because Vinokurov has gone. He's hit Sanchez, allowing him no time at all now to recover from the chase.
Ouch, that really hurt, that attack. As soon as he came onto the wheel of Sammy Sanchez, he went straight over the top. There's only about 20 seconds separating all of the front end of the race here, and as long as Alexander Vinokurov can keep this tempo going, he's got a very good chance to survive, and I think that will probably indicate 2 kilometers to go to the finish, but this is going to be a very long 2-kilometer ride for Alexander Vinokurov.
Well, it's been a long way since the top of the Côte de Tanneron today, as we've seen Sanchez under pressure. Now he's going to have to hang on again for a second place finish here, but the reaction is coming from the group, which has been strengthened remarkably by a number of riders who really must have chased down that mountain just a few moments ago to bridge the gap.
Good move at the front there by Kim Kirchen, who's been looking very strong over the last couple of days. He's moved up into the top 10 in the overall classification. But this man is a long way down, losing himself big time on a couple of the important stages. But look at the power here. He's crouched down to get himself as low as possible to try and at least have some kind of aerodynamics. He gets buffeted by the wind coming in off the Mediterranean coast.
Racing into Cannes, remember, you keep going if you want to arrive in Nice, but the riders will stop in Cannes, they'll jump in the cars and arrive at Nice by car. Tomorrow is the last day, and it's a circuit of Nice of about 144 kilometres. So right now, Alexander Vinokurov looking for a second stage win this week, and it looks as though he's not going to have to worry about beating Sanchez, sadly, I have to say, anymore. He may have to think, though, of beating all of the peloton, who are steadily regrouping.
Sammy Sanchez now caught in no man's land in second position. He tried everything there. He's halfway across the gap. 15 seconds to Alexander Vinokurov and 33 seconds to the main field. When you've tried a move like he just tried, Sammy Sanchez, you've given everything, and it's very difficult once you've been counterattacked by a man like Alexander Vinokurov to actually pull yourself back into the race. I think he will get picked up before the end, but the question mark is, can they organize the front end of the group to catch Alexander Vinokurov? He keeps looking up the road there, and in fact they couldn't put up the barriers this afternoon because of the wind, but that was the red kite for the 1 kilometre to go board.
At least they got that across the road, and that was a welcome sight, and Paulo Sanchez is going to see it a little bit too late, I'm afraid, because now they're whipping up for the sprint here. I think Alexander Vinokurov has got enough gap there to make it 2 wins this week, and if you can't win the race for a third year, at least make sure everybody sees you're in it, and he's certainly doing that.
Watch out for the green jersey of David Rebellin. Let's not forget there are still bonuses available on the finish line. There are 6 seconds bonus for second place and 4 seconds for third, and that's why David Rebellin was moving himself up to the front end of that group. He still is looking to pounce and try and steal the lead away from Jörg Jats right at the very end of Paris-Nice. This man is not worried about time bonuses at all. All he's worried about is surviving off the front end of the main field, but he is looking exceptionally powerful over these last couple of days, and I think he's going to walk away with this victory. Didn't see what that was, but I think he's not very much more than 500 metres to go, and Sammy's
Sanchez,
about to get caught.
Sanchez is not going to make it. He's rolling in every direction here, and he can virtually see the line. And here comes the rush for the line now. They're not going to catch up with Vinokurov, but poor old Samuel Sanchez is going to get nothing out of this at the end of the day. And he can't believe it as the field go by. Is that Kim Kirkener has gained going past? It looks like it was. But win number 2 of the week for Alexander Vinokurov. Just keeps on checking because there's not much more fuel left in his particular tank, but he's going to make the line this time. 4 hours 39 minutes to the line. He gets win number 2. Oh, and those legs are hurting today. That was a tough racing stage for sure. But still in the yellow jersey as Kim Kirken looks as though he is going to keep that field at bay and take a second place for Fassa Bortolo. They had hoped it would have been perhaps for Frank van den Broeke and a small bonus, but no. Kim gets it, and then the big sprint to the line. Watch the left of the picture here, crucial. Jens Voigt, no, yes, I think it was Voigt, who takes third, and what's more, took a valuable couple of seconds away from David Rebellin. They can't do a thing wrong right now, CSC.
What's important about that third place there, in fact, a quick calculation, Phil, as I think he's actually going to pull himself up to the same time as Bobby Julich in the overall classification. So CSC have got third and fourth now, but Julich and Voigt will be in the same time. But the top 2 positions, there's not going to be any change at all. But this man, what a great tactical move, and what a brave move to try and ride across a 30-second gap right at the very end. He's certainly riding into form, and I think he's going to have to look after himself in Milan-San Remo, because this man is starting to set himself up as a favourite for that one-day classic, which is in about a week's time.
And that itself too, just keep on going down the coastline here and leave France through Monte Carlo and into Italy. Well, he tried going up the Côte de Tanneron, it didn't work, so he waited until he got to the wind that was blowing across the straits there on the side of the Mediterranean, and that one worked. But you have to do pretty well and be very strong. 18 seconds in the end was his final gap. Voigt given third place. Jatzeberg was fourth there, just getting ahead of his teammate Rebellin. So that's put David in his place, finishing fifth. George Hincapie producing a good finish in sixth. Congratulations to Vinokurov there from Bernard Hinault. 5 times winner of the Tour de France, and the winner of this race for the last 2 years. He's now got 2 stage wins and still 1 more day to go. Jats 15 seconds ahead of Rebellin. Paul was right, Julich and Voigt are equal third now. Because of the time trial count back, it looks as though they're convinced Julich is the better placed in third place. George Hincapie is now in fifth.
Paris-Nice is a very nice race, and it's been very hard with the weather. It's also been very bad, and I think tomorrow's going to be another hard day in Nice, and I'm looking forward to being finished. Yes, waiting for the Tour de France, also the Olympic Games, but my fitness is quite good now, and I hope to continue on better for the Tour de France.
Well, the Tour de France still a long way to go, but for Paris-Nice just 1 day from the finish now, and not the traditional finish with the time trial up the Col d'Ez and a flat morning stage down to the Promenade des Anglais, but a circuit based on the Col d'Ez and a total of 144 kilometres.
Nasty, look at that, looks like an upturned saw. They go 3 times over the Col d'Ez and twice over the Col de Châteauneuf. Tell you what, although it is the final stage and we're just meandering along at a nice pace, There's a lot of riders starting to feel the pain grip into the legs here at 106 kilometers covered. That puts us around about 38 kilometers to go to the finish, and just one climb left of the day, and that's the final ascent of the Col d'Huez. Tyler Hamilton at the back end of the group, starting to look pretty good. He's quite happy, I think, with the way this Paris-Nice has evolved for him. Many riders, though, will be suffering, I think, after this race with the very treacherous weather conditions we had halfway through when one of the stages had to be cancelled.
Nice descent, chance to relax here for Tyler, wisely sitting off the back so he can see the track on the way down, I suspect. And a little bit of sun peeking out now as we get down towards base level again. The Col d'Huez in the old days of Paris-Nice was the big killer time trial that rounded off the end of a double dose. They used to do a circuit in the morning that would take them over the Côte de Tanneron, usually ended in a bunch sprint, and then a couple of hours rest, lunch, and then in time trial formation it was finally decided the destiny of the Paris-Nice. But this year we're going up the mountain road race style.
Picking their way off the final few kilometers of the Col de Châteauneuf as they head down into the outskirts of Nice, and then these guys will start to set themselves up for the ascent of Col d'Huez for the final time. And I wonder if we're going to see any challenge coming to Jorg Yats. He's ridden so well since day one when he dominated the first individual time trial at 13.2 kilometers from Chaville to Vannes. Ever since then, he's been able to call upon his teammates to completely look after him on all of the flat sections. They've been very dominant on some of the flatter stages, and they've shown themselves very capable of defending on the hilly sections, despite losing 3 men yesterday, including Michele Bartoli, Jakob Pyle and Michael Blaudson. I think then people started to think that there was a weakness in the team, but they're not showing it here this afternoon, are they?
No, they certainly are not. They are looking terrifically good. Ironically, last year Tyler Hamilton was on the CSC team and he finished second in the prologue time trial. History almost repeated itself in some ways because the team rode so well in that prologue time trial. And Yatsky, who at the time we thought would just be a leader for a day or two, has turned out to be a very solid leader, called upon when necessary to do the job himself. He's had the strength, but basically he has relied a lot on the workhorse rate of people like Jens Voigt and Bobby Jewett.
Tyler Hamilton just putting his hand up there at 28 kilometers to go. I think he wants to bring on board a final drink before we get down onto the coast and meander around the Promenade des Anglais. Just explaining what he was doing there, he was trying to get Tyler Hamilton to come to the front, but Hamilton is looking for his team car now. This is a serious gap. 1 minute and 10 seconds to this leading group of riders, which rather ominously contains Alexander Vinokourov again, as well as Tyler Hamilton and Levi Leipheimer for the United States. And Gorka Gonzalez has managed to get in here as well for Euskaltel Euskadi. There's Aitor Oza, very happy, I would think, his final 3 days here at Paris-Nice.
Brave man, Torsten Heikman, going back and admonishing Tyler Hamilton. He finished 4th in the Tour de France. And he's riding very much his own race just now. There is the peloton, totally regrouped, quite amazingly that. Look at the length of that peloton, clearly in full flight. Just over a minute behind those 10 riders with the Col d'Huez climb to come. It's still far from over. That breakaway, nothing like safe just now, and it's all being driven on by the boys from CSC.
The CSC don't really need to pull that breakaway back. If anybody wants to win the stage here, this is Eric Decker at the back of the group, and I'm quite happy to see that Decker has ridden himself into the front end of the peloton here at Paris-Nice. Although he's here at the rear end of the pack, he has actually started off this season a lot better. It was 2 years ago that he actually broke his leg in Milan-San Remo. It's been a long fight back to the top for him. Georg Tochnik just on the far side there. You know what, Phil, there's a lot of riders from Gerolstein are moving to the front end of the main field here, and I wonder if they are really going to have a real serious go on the final ascent of the Col d'Huez. The pressure is on CSC to defend on the final climb of this year's Paris-Nice, the first category Col d'Huez. As riders now, the team cars are going forward, so that indicates the gap is well over the 1 minute margin. And I think that's why Tyler Hamilton was so aggressively calling his team car forward. He knew that they were going to stop feeding at 20 kilometers to go, and he wanted to make sure that his team car got across there because he's probably started to get just a little bit. Oh, that's not very good.
Now, I think the cars are also causing some confusion at the front end there, but those little bollards really caused a problem, but they're all safely through. That's all that matters, I guess. They're just coming up there with Samuel Demoulin of the AG2R squad, last man on the peloton just now. Meanwhile, back amongst the 10 front runners, we're in the streets here around Nice, and soon we'll be on our way over the Col d'Ez.
25 kilometers to go. These guys, I think, now will start to play a tactical move as they know that somebody is going to attack on the final ascent of the Col d'Ez, and the riders like Benoit Poilvet and David Moncoutier will be thinking about trying to get themselves a win for France. Moncoutier should be able to launch an attack. He's a very good climber. He's finished high up in the overall classification of the Tour de l'Avenir in the past. And I would say right here he's looking at the possibility of trying to outwit the men who are showing that they've got the best form in this year's Paris-Nice. Men like Alexander Vinokourov there on the far side, Denny Menchov, who has already won himself a stage, and the two Americans, Levi Leipheimer in third place there, and Tyler Hamilton, who both seem to be riding very well in the last 48 hours of racing here.
Short turn there by Vinokourov. Osa comes through, nobody follows Osa through, and Vinokourov is wondering where they've all gone. He's having to close the gap down himself. Only 67 seconds the gap. Now either there are a lot of tired riders in this front group, or there are quite a few individuals planning a lone assault on the Col d'Ez, and they don't want to put in the effort leading to it.
Osa looks quite resplendent in that King of the Mountains jersey there with the red spots all over it. All he's got to do is get himself to the finish line today to win that classification. We're around about 4 kilometers away from the start of the Col d'Ez for the final time, and it's 25 kilometers to go to the finishing line. And somebody in this leading group of 10 now is starting to nurture the thought that they've got a great chance of winning the stage, and that's a very nice shot that we've got there of the main field going under that flock of birds. Stretched out into a big long line, Team Phonak at the back. Front end of the main field, this is Frank Schleck. He's up in 10th place in the overall classification, despite doing the majority of work for his teammates throughout the rest of his Paris-Nice, as we now start to the early kilometre here of the Col d'Ez. Now the attacks are sure to come quite soon.
Not too far away from the centre of Nice, this climb. Vinokourov looks across, checks out who's here. I wonder if Tyler Hamilton will try to leave on a high right now. Poilvet looking quite good. Tyler and Levi Leipheimer. And the King of the Mountains setting the pace onto the final climb of this year's Paris-Nice. Heitor Osa. They certainly hit these hills hard. Leipheimer in second place. I wonder if he's planning anything special. It's nice to see him in the lead group on the last day of Paris-Nice, that's for sure. Denny Menchov off to the left, and he's had a stage win, and he's a good climber. There'll be no fears around the corner for him. Vinokourov has dropped to the back. Well, knowing that man, I'd be worried about that.
I would absolutely be worried about the position of Alexander Vinokourov in this group. Heitor Osa has decided he wants to show his climbing legs off here this afternoon. In fact, he's got himself a little gap there. He's being chased down by his teammate Denny Menchov, who's already won himself a stage. There's Alberto Contador. Tyler Hamilton looks exceptionally fresh here, very comfortable in the last day of racing, and there is Alexander Vinokourov just sitting at the back of the group. There's absolutely no pressure on the shoulders of Vinokourov here in this breakaway. He's got himself 2 stage victories, but he will be, I think, sitting there, Phil, just to keep an eye on anybody coming to the front to try and launch an attack. The main field now are also on the slopes of the Col d'Ez, and the time gap is at minute 55, but this man is not worried about that.
Denny Menchov trying now to lead the leading group, and he's gone very early. Knows he has another teammate who could relieve him at the front if things go a little bit pear-shaped. So Denny Menchov launches the first attack on the base slopes, if you like, of the Col d'Ez. Gets a little bit more open towards the top. He kept his old rhythm going for quite a while there before he sat down in the saddle. Now he's sat down, oh dear, and they're all coming back up to him just at the moment. Is this going to be Contador? Yes, it is. Who's come up? Alberto Contador.
They've got a nice gap here, but the man dragging the back is Alexander Vinokourov. That's why he went to the back of the group, just so he could keep an eye on who was going to launch the attacks. Leipheimer in a nice position here on the wheel of Alexander Vinokourov, and we're I think just if we could look a little bit further back, we would see David Moncoutier as well in presence.
There you go, Paul. It is. he's hooked up too. So 5 riders trying to get together on the climb. What's happened to Tyler Hamilton?
Well, Menchov has kicked again. Tyler Hamilton is a long way back there. In fact, he's alongside Heikman here. Heikman obviously did a lot of work for his teammate, and he will just try and ride a sensible pace. But there's another move gone off the front of that group there, and it was again Denny Menchov, the Russian rider, putting the hammer down for a second time.
Well, the second attack, I think, will finish off Tyler Hamilton and Heikman, but we'll see. David Moncoutier, Vinokurov, Levi Leipheimer. I think that just now all of these boys are at the limit of their day's strength. We'll see.
This is Kim Kirchen a little bit further back, and this must be at the front end of the main field if we could look back. See just exactly what is going on here. He's trying to ride himself across the gap here. I think he's actually jumped away from the main field, so he's caught between the leading group of 10 and the peloton. Now this is a clever move for him. He could move himself up a few places in the overall classification. Looking down on the peloton, Alex Zuller at the front end, as he has been very often throughout this year's Paris-Nice. And still a block of CSC men on the front, keeping a very close guidance on this armada.
And the man in green, doing what he's done for a week now, is right on the shoulder of his major rival there.
Hamilton's come back.
Hamilton's got back to the leaders. Heikman's got back with him, rather. And as they all reach for the gear levers, it looks as though Vinokurov is now launching an attack. Heikman will thank him for that. He's probably feeling pretty rough after that chase.
Just wants to test the waters here, Alexander Vinokurov. Just looking over his shoulder to see who's responded, and the man who has responded present, thank you very much, is Levi Leipheimer, and immediately they've dispatched Tyler Hamilton again and Torsten Heikman. It's the same 5 men. Third place there, Denny Menchov. David Moncoutier at the back end of this group, and Alberto Contador in the light blue jersey of Liberty Seguros.
He's been one of the big surprises over the last few days, always in the action, done very, very well. Jurgiatsky now knows the top of this climb, in the situation like he's in, will mean he'll win the race by the bottom, and that is going to be a superb result for him.
Jens Voigt. Look at the face on him in second position there as Frank Schleck just swings off and allows his teammate to come forward and set the pace making as he has done for the last 3 or 4 days. Bobby Julich too is looking very frisky at this time of the season, and I think we could see a very big year coming from Bobby Julich. This is the best he's ridden for 3 or 4 seasons, and I think very often, as is the case when you swap teams, you do see a major change in a rider's mentality. Tyler Hamilton pulls himself back up to the leading group of 5 with Torsten Heikman, so it's now 7 men at the front end of the race.
And Contador riding on the shoulder there of Vinokurov. He's a second-year professional, and his only stage win as a pro was a stage of the Tour of Poland last year, which is a pretty tough race, so he's got possibilities. Tends to take a couple of years before you settle in against these class of bike riders, or this class of bike rider. Summit is at 5 kilometres, was it? 5 kilometres to the summit. Then there's still a long drag towards the summit. Up comes the Rabobank team car. Message for Levi Leipheimer. Off in the drink, actually.
A minute 15 back to the main field. These riders say can't mess about quite as much as they are doing. They really need to, somebody needs to start setting a fair tempo on the front end of the group, because as you can see in the peloton, they've got themselves organised. It's CSC realising now they've got about 5 kilometres left to race in Paris-Nice, and as long as Jurgiatsky doesn't fall off and doesn't get challenged by David Rebellin, he's going to run out the leader, and rather an impressive leader from day one right the way through to the very end. Slowly but surely they're ticking away these kilometres, and I don't think if they go together over the top of the climb anybody's going to challenge Jurgiatsky on the descent. The big question mark to me though, Phil, is can they pull back that leading group of 10?
Well, they have on every occasion this last week. This is the 8th day now. We lost 1 day with the snow, so it's been a 7-day race this year. Would it have made any difference to the control that CSC have shown us on this race? I don't think it would, but we'll never know the answer to that, will we? And certainly the yellow jersey's been a very solid leader of this race.
A nice set of rims there for Jurgiatsky. He's got some very deep-rimmed carbon fibre rims there, and they will be a big advantage on the descent. Slightly more aerodynamic than the standard wheel, and I think he's trying to put everything to his advantage here on this final stage of Paris-Nice. 144 kilometres, 90 miles, and looking at the race profile, I don't think there's any of that is absolutely flat. It's all uphill or down dale.
Aitor Osa, now is he going clear? I think he is.
He's about to get caught by the main
Oh,
field.
he's
there
going
coming
back.
round. He's one of the riders caught out by the accelerations of Denny Menchov, his teammate, let's not forget. And he's really the man who started to set up that move at the start of the climb. He'll be back in the fold. Not too much to worry about for him because he's going to run out the winner of the King of the Mountains classification. The CSC boys here, Phil, seem to be getting just a little bit nervous. They keep looking over their shoulders. They want to know how Jorg Yats is this afternoon. And they also want to know the position and the form that David Rebellin has got. David Rebellin separated by just a few seconds from the leader, Jorg Yats. And if he can pull back that on the descent, that would be the biggest turnaround that we've seen in this year's Paris-Nice.
I think Rebellin settled for second place a few days ago, in all honesty, because he's never once, to our knowledge, launched an attack. And this is the last climb of the tour, and if he felt good, it's about now he must move because he's about 4 kilometres from the top of the climb. Aitor Osa coming back into the group, so he's another big name, although he's not a big name in the final classification as it stands just now. He's going back into the group. It still leaves Levi Leipheimer up front though, and Tyler Hamilton. We've lost sight of them for the moment, as we now ride probably into the last 3 kilometres. Now, where are we here? I thought that was a one. I thought that was Sanchez going away again, but in fact it's Gorka Gonzalez here, who's done a bit of a ride to get across this gap.
Just goes to show that they actually slowed down this leading group of riders here because of all the matching going on, and that's why Gorka Gonzalez has managed to catch them up once again. On the front end of the group, Alexander Vinokurov is not asking anybody at all to help, and he's got Denny Menchov just sitting on his wheel. We're on the flatter part of the climb here. In a few kilometres time it will kick up for the last 3 kilometres, and that's where we will probably see somebody try and launch an attack.
As we look up there, 20 kilometres to go, 12 miles to race, and we've got T-Mobile on the front, Alexander Vinokurov driving on, and still a little bit of a move coming here from Kim Kirken, the Luxembourger, who is still trying to cross the gap and still has a chance.
Great bike rider, a man I think we'll see an awful lot more of in the latter part of the season too. When you've got form like this in the month of March, well, it certainly is an indicator that you're going to ride well through the classic races. The front end of the main field, they are still, Phil, in the same status quo as they have been for the last 3 days. It's red and white jerseys on the front. It's Jens Voigt, or it's Bobby Julich, or it's Frank Schleck, just setting the pace for the man in the yellow jersey. He really has ridden a superb race. He's never really panicked at all. He has been challenged on a couple of occasions, but on every time that somebody's tried to go out and dislodge his lead, he's reported present for action, and he's covered every move, and when his teammates have faltered, he's taken over the responsibility himself.
It's a sign of a good leader. Schleck, Voigt, Julich and Yatsky was the order on the front of the peloton, and that'll do them very nicely, thank you, and nobody seems capable of attacking them. The leaders are now 19 kilometres from the finish and a couple of kilometres from the summit of the Col d'Ez, and Kim Kirken is making progress. This is Poilvet, who's coming back from the leaders. As far as we know, I don't think he's had a mechanical, and can he just kick in there? He's going to have a go and try and get back up to the men. If he can get back in the next kilometre, of course, he could be in for the decisive move, but it's all downhill towards Nice.
Good move here by Kim Kirken. He's obviously not worried at all about the fact that he's using an incredible amount of energy to try and ride across a gap to what was initially a 10-man group. We're down to, I think, 7 riders in this group. Heikman on the front has decided now to whip up the pace because they realise that the main field is slowly but surely eating into their advantage. And that main peloton there, Phil, that really has reduced in numbers. Menchov again on the attack.
Getting some impression of height now. Menchov on the attack, followed by Vinokurov, Contador, Levi Leipheimer, David Moncoutier, all responding at the moment as they get towards the summit of the climb.
Menchov kicks again. He really wants to get this one there, and not far away from the kilometre banner. It's not really that difficult, this climb here, and there's a Kazakh flag at the side of the road for Alexander Vinokurov. Vinokurov moving up alongside Menchov, but Menchov says, sorry mate, I'm the strongest one today.
Menchov having none of this now, but what they are doing is, I think, oh, here comes the counter-attack from Alberto Contador.
He's all over the bike there, and Levi Leipheimer too slowly dragging himself up to them with David Moncoutier still present, and this is going to be a 5-man group because I've got a feeling we will see Tyler Hamilton Tyler doesn't seem to be able to respond to the accelerations, but he's never panicked at all, and every time they've accelerated, he's let them go, and he's slowly taken his own pace, and he's ridden himself back up to the front end of the bike race.
Early days yet for Tyler Hamilton. Thinking of the Tour de France, plenty of time to find form. With the big guns firing in March, very often the big guns are a little bit damp towards the middle of the season, so it's nothing to worry about with Tyler just now. There's the Belgian flag, but I don't think there's a Belgian rider in the group.
Vinokurov's gone again. This man is unbelievable. He wants to go out on every possible situation to try and get himself an attack. 1 kilometre to go to the summit now. As he goes around the corner, looks over his shoulder. This is an unbelievable Paris-Nice for the man who we expected to be the pre-race favourite to win in the overall. He lost 5.25 minutes on the first day on the open road, but since then he's proved that he actually had the form to win this race.
Well, this is again the sort of move he always looks for. He tried it yesterday, it didn't work, he was brought back, so he went again when it got rather windy on the flat run into Cannes. Now he's again tried on the climb, and this time I think he's hit them because they were cooked. Denis Menchov was possibly the strongest of the group. He launched an attack, Vinokurov went with him, saw him use his energy and attacked him. And look at this, Rebellin, the very last climb in the race, has decided to stretch his legs and just see if he can take anything out of Ryugyatska, who is absolutely vigilant and is going to give him absolutely nothing.
Moving to the front there, Jens Voigt said, well, that's a very good move, thank you very much, but we'll steer you guys to the summit of this climb and then we can have a very rapid descent into Nice. Voigt is an unbelievable bike rider, a very popular bike rider. Not only does he speak French and English and German, his English is actually very much more as like an Australian, because he spent a long time riding for an Australian team. Benoit Poilvet, who was in the leading group of 10, he's about to get picked up by the main field, who are just round the corner. Look at the face on Jens Voigt here. He really is a great bike rider. Worth an awful lot to a team, and I really am quite surprised that Crédit Agricole let him go. Now, Denis Menchov is actually coming across to Vinokurov.
Can you believe that? There's the summit. So Menchov will get the points for second place, which will stop anybody else having them for his team leader, Osa. As the mountains are now behind us, Osa is the king of the mountains. Who's going to win the stage? Denis Menchov or Alexander Vinokurov, because these two are beginning to make it a two-man battle.
Menchov waited to see Alexander Vinokurov get the gap and saw that the other riders did not have the legs to respond, so he's bridged the gap alone. Well, he's almost bridged the gap alone, cutting right into the interior of that corner there. He wants to try and get onto the wheel of this man before they get to the summit of the climb.
Now the descent of the Col d'Ez, and the pursuit will begin. There'll be no immediate reaction from the CSC boys. There's no reason to. They've won the Tour now. There's nobody will steal the time as long as they keep an exact eye on the men nearest to them. And I think these two might be battling out the stage result now. And Alexander be a little bit surprised perhaps that Denis Menchov refound his legs and has come back up to him.
Well, it's Bobby Julich's turn now at the front end of the peloton to help out Jens Voigt in second place. The man in yellow jersey there, Jörg Jats, has looked absolutely superb since he took the lead in the opening day's time trial. And there's George Hincapie too. Now, if it all came back together and George Hincapie got himself a time bonus, he could actually move up into a podium position. And I think that's going to be a very tall order for anybody here this afternoon, because those 7 riders up the road have now got a time gap of around about 1 minute and 55 seconds over the yellow jersey group.
Such a very good ride as it is for George, sitting in 5th place in Paris-Nice. Far and away his best finish in this event, and that's the way it's going to be, and he's paying close attention now. The team time trial of CSC driving on. The workhorse, Jens Voigt, has been simply superb. There's the beauty of the Côte d'Azur now as we begin our way off the Alpes Maritimes and back into the ground level department of Nice. And yet again, a familiar sight these last couple of days. Alexander Vinokurov setting the pace. And if this is Sammy Sanchez, the world will be complete.
Well, the Euskaltel-Euskadi boys have really been out on the attack on a number of occasions, and it is Sammy Sanchez trying to get himself off the front of the group. But it's a tall order to try and ride across a 1:55 gap at this stage of the race, because most of the descents now into the finish is going to be run off at around about 70 kilometers an hour. So to bridge that kind of a gap, you have to be a very special bike rider. You can see how CSC are not panicking at all now. They are feeling a lot more confident, probably a lot more confident than they felt yesterday, because at the start of yesterday morning stage, 3 very strong riders from their team weren't able to take the start. And I think they probably felt then that they may well falter. They certainly didn't on the slopes of the Col de Tanneron, and they haven't done that either on the slopes of the Col d'Aise. The 2 leaders now with a slight advantage over a chasing group.
Back to the dizzy descents down towards the finish, which characterised this year's Paris-Nice. Watch the sharp turn here at the bottom. Looks a little bit of a curly one. With 35 seconds, I suspect that's now back to the remnants of the breakaway. Sanchez trying to reach them. Driving on, Denny Menchov. They'll go down this as fast as they can. Still a fair way down to ground level. Handley Gorka setting the pace at the front of the chase group, or is it the whole peloton there? It is the whole peloton, so it's probably Sanchez.
The whole peloton picking their way down the first very difficult corners of this descent. Sanchez has proved to be a very good descender, although I'm not quite sure this is a great move that he's coming off the front with. He's got a minute 55 gap to bridge, and even some of the best descenders in the world wouldn't be able to do that, but he's going to go for it. He's got a teammate up the road, Gorka Gonzalez. I'm not sure where Gorka Gonzalez is because of all that aggression on the final few kilometers up to the summit of the Col d'Aise. Again, you can see at the front end of the peloton though, Phil, there's no panic at all from Team CSC. Completely under control. They've got really nothing very much to worry about.
It's a lovely feeling after a week of battling, and the second man in line, the yellow jersey, that should frighten anybody away from the attack. Sanchez is again on one of those death-defying descents to try and drive himself away from the peloton. It could work too, because they're not going to chase him down. He won't cross the gap of 1 minute 50, I don't think, but he could reach the others perhaps.
The 2 leaders, Vinokourov getting down into a very low tuck position. This is a fast descent here. This is a different descent to the one they've done on the first 2 ascents of the Col d'Aise, and it's a very big wide main road, as these are the 3 chasers. That's David Moncoutier, Levi Leipheimer and Alberto Contador in 3rd position. These riders are around about 30 seconds in arrears. They need to work very hard together if they want to pull back the 2 leaders.
And good to see, and I'm sure Rabobank are pretty pleased, the return to form of Levi Leipheimer after his crash last July on the early days of the Tour de France. That really was sad. Stage 1 out with a broken hip. Looking good. Working with this little breakaway group now. The only result to talk about last year at the end of the day was his 8th place in the Dauphiné, which was the build-up race to the Tour de France, and indicated he had the form to take him for a high finish in Paris. It wasn't to be. Now he's the long road back here, and this has been a good week for him. But these 2 riders are having the limelight once again at the end of the day. Vinokourov has 2 wins just now.
10 kilometers to go for the 2 leaders, and now neither one of them is shirking the pacemaking. They're both of them going to the front every 100 meters or so to keep the pace as high as possible, and that's something they need to do, because those 3 chasers behind are fairly well organized, and they're tough bike riders. Levi Leipheimer there on the right-hand side has done his turn, and he's allowing David Moncoutier to come forward. I would suggest, though, that Alberto Contador, number 123, Phil, here, I think he's taking a bit of a backseat, and that's something you can't do at this stage of the race with just about 14 minutes of racing to go.
1:55 the gap, showing nobody in between. That's probably just a peloton time check, because there is definitely somebody in between just now. There they are. And here's the peloton. The race has been run. It's all over. CSC will win this race now, barring an accident, of course, which we certainly hope doesn't happen. CSC have ridden a brilliant race as a team, and didn't really ever look in doubt at losing control of this Paris-Nice this year.
Not only do they control the overall individual race, they're also the leaders in the team classification as well, and leading them is leading US Postal Service. The Postal Service, by the way, is one of the last races left in this event with a full complement of riders. From the 20 teams that started in Paris 8 days ago, there's only Crédit Agricole, Liberty Seguros and US Postal Service that remain with a full complement of riders, which is quite interesting, because a few years ago they used to say that the US Postal Service was not a strong team in depth. I think over the last couple of years they certainly have changed that look.
Well, also Max van Heeslik is riding extremely well this year too, and in the early part of the season he's going to be a great help to George Hincapie when the Classics start. Maxi is a very, very good bike rider. That's the young pro, second year for him, Contador. He might be a little overawed here. We'll see how it goes, but Leipheimer would like to finish off with a good result, and he's racing for third place in this group.
Like to get himself the win if he could. He's going to go to the front as often as he can to share the pace painting with these guys. That's David Moncoutier there in the blue jersey. Blue shorts have copied it. They're not pulling anything back on the two leaders at all, and again the last time check that came through was 30 seconds, and still a long way back to the main field, who basically I would say have shut off the racing here, Phil. They're not too worried. The men who are controlling the pacemaking are the riders of the team leader Jorg Yats. They're on the front end of the peloton, just ticking away there, just making sure that they get the last few kilometres away safely as we join the second group on the road. David Moncoutier. Tyler Hamilton, well, I don't know where he's come from.
Well, I have absolutely no idea where he's come from at the moment, but he's quite clearly there. He must have just come out of the tunnel, because there's two riders come up here now.
Come back with Gorka Gonzalez, and he's come back with Eichmann.
They must have come through that tunnel somehow. It appears that one or two have got back. We had no idea. They must have been sitting just behind the camera. We never saw them, but they're there. Tyler Hamilton is there now.
Well, it's good to see Tyler riding himself back into this race, because I was a little bit worried about him over the first couple of days, and the fact that the weather was certainly not the best weather for preparation for the latter part of the season. But he's a tough bike rider, a tough character as well, and he's now lying in a position where he's got a chance of getting himself third place out on the road. Number one, last year's winner, Alexander Vinokourov, 2 stage wins to his credit. Number 141, Denny Menchov, best young rider in the Tour de France last year. He too has a stage win. And I tell you what, if it comes down to a sprint, I'm not quite sure who I'm going to predict here.
Well, we're getting down into the streets of Nice now. Not too sure what that banner was. It might have been 5 kilometres from the finish. Two riders are members of the former Soviet Union. They can converse in the Russian language, probably. I'm quite sure that Alexander will speak that language as they now race down towards the end. 1-on-1.
Difficult sprint when you've been away for about 20 kilometres. They attacked around about 1.5 kilometres from the summit of the Col d'Ez, and they've both worked very well together. Nobody's taken a back seat. Nobody's been glass cranking, as they call it in the sport of professional cycling, just holding back a little bit for the sprint. They both realised that they had to work maximum till they got down to the final few hundred metres. And I wonder if they will just swing into the final kilometre together and have a drag strip race to the finish line, or whether there will be a tactical manoeuvring, the cat and mouse tactics that we see, very much reminiscent of track style racing.
I'll go for the tactical manoeuvre because the score is 2-1 at the moment in stage victories this week for those two. And the most that Menchov can get is a draw out of it, of course. But Alexander can make it 3-1, and there's a lot of action in this chase group. It's not finished yet.
Well, there's a lot of action, but they are still losing time. It's 1 minute and 10 seconds to this group of 5 riders, so 7 riders I should say, who are trying to pull themselves back into the race. And we're now round the back end of Nice, and that little building on the corner there indicates that they're not far away from the Promenade des Anglais. And then very shortly, Menchov has gone to the front. Alexander Vinokourov right now making the last few preparations. It's always difficult in a 2-man sprint, especially when the 2 riders that we're looking at here have both shared the pacemaking. They've both been on the attack over the last 3 days of racing. As now they swing up, they go up the Promenade des Anglais, they hit a U-turn at the top end, and then they've got around about a 700 metre straight to the finishing line.
I'm just about passing the spot where Paul Sherwen told me he was retiring back in, I think it was 1985, and I asked him to be a television commentator.
Do you regret that?
Well, I think it was probably the biggest mistake I ever made. There's the kilometre, Paul. 2 riders are clear, and as always, a lovely crowd here on the Promenade des Anglais. 1 kilometre to go. Now, can Alexander Vinokourov make it 3? Or can Denny Menchov get his second? And Menchov, oh, I thought we'd switch cameras, though we have. We've gone to the chase behind. There's no way these boys are going to catch up now.
Over a minute between these guys and the 2 in front. David Moncoutier and Alberto Contador trying to get themselves back onto the tail of the group of 5, making it 7. They've now come around the U-turn, and now is the moment when I've got a funny feeling, Phil, they are going to drag strip race here. These 2 riders, they're pretty good friends. They speak a similar language. One's from Kazakhstan, one is from Russia. Slight jockeying for position, but nobody yet taking the advantage of getting into the slipstream, although Denny Menchov is dropping into position number 2.
Well, I think He's not a faster finisher as Alexander Vinokurov, but he's got to keep Vinokurov right up front. But he is doing the honourable thing. He's riding out in the wind. He's not going into his slipstream. He's trying to ease the Kazakh rider into the lead, though. They're going to go side by side to the line here, that's for sure. And now, well, indeed, Menchov has been forced to take second wheel. I don't think he's got any legs to come over Alexander Vinokurov, who's going for his second win in his many days and his third this week as they come up towards the line now. He couldn't win the Tour for a third time, but he could win 3 stages of the Tour this time. And Alexander Vinokurov, he made a long sprint of that, but Menchov, quite honestly, was never in it.
That was a very long sprint he let out from about 350 metres. Their chasing group now coming under the red flag. 1,000 metres for them. Tyler Hamilton on the back of the group. In front of him, Gorka Gonzalez in the blue jersey. Alberto Contador right in front of him. It's in front of him, it looks to me as if it's in fact Heikman as well who is there. In front of him in second position is David Moncoutier, and leading them around Levi Leipheimer.
2 Americans in at the hunt. The Americans had a very, very good Paris-Nice. All well for the rest of the season for them, because they're spread across the teams of Europe these days. I don't know if Tyler Hamilton's going to bother to take part. He's staying last man just now. I would have thought that Levi Leipheimer might flex those legs, but the odds on for me would be Torsten Heikman in the sprint, possibly Moncoutier. He's not a bad finisher either.
Not a bad finisher. I think Tyler Hamilton at the back of the group there, he's just happy to show that he's got the form. He's ascending in condition throughout the start of this season, 181. Heikman just going on the left-hand side and nobody's moved.
Well, Heikman's not going to even worry about the sprint now, because there's been little or no reaction from the boys behind, not pure sprinters at all. And Heikman is going to win with a time gap over that group now. He just swung the gear lever across. There's the gears going up into the bigger gears. And he gets first and third now for T-Mobile today, as the others still shadow box, but they're racing for 4th place with Leipheimer on the front, about to lead it out. But Torsten Heikman, who had his moments out there when he was dropped, but he came back, and that's what happens if you hang on in there. He's finished 3rd on the day.
Gorka Gonzalez on the front here. Right on his wheel is David Moncoutier. There's no challenge there at all. I think, in fact, Levi Leipheimer might just have got across the line there in 5th.
Well, here's the race now. I wonder if Jörg Jatzke will give us a wave as the winner of Paris-Nice, and continues his excellent start to the year, his 2nd big stage race win, and the season has hardly begun. As he sits there in the middle, there's the wave to the crowd as the peloton come over. David Rebellin finished in front of him, but it won't matter because he'll get the same time. So the people on the Promenade des Anglais have witnessed a Danish winner now of the Paris-Nice race. And that is the first time, to my knowledge, that has happened. There might have been just one other down the ranks a while back. Danish win, I beg your pardon. Just Paul showing quickly indicating he's a German winner. Of course, he is riding on a Danish team. There's the stage win, the same name for the 3rd time this week, Alexander Vinokurov, same time as Menchov. Then Heikman getting just a few seconds advantage in the sprint over Gorka Gonzalez. Levi Leipheimer, yes indeed, taking 5th place on the line. So the man has won it for 2 years, at least has got 3 stage victories this time out, and some good form in those legs. Milan San Remo is not too far away, and that's in miles as well as in date, because it's just through the roads there to Monte Carlo, and you're in Italy. But there is the result. Jörg Jatzke of Germany winning in just over 28 hours of cycling. David Rebellin in the end, only 15 seconds back. Bobby Julich, terrific result for America this. Julich is back with a fine 3rd place there. Hincapie too is riding high and waving the flag for US Postal. But for this week at least, the champion undoubtedly has been the man who really has been a very quiet teammate until now. Now he's the champion of Paris-Nice.
Yeah, it's really good. It's really good. I'm really content. Tournament, and this is just beautiful for me.
Was it a really hard week for you?
Yeah, of course. It's always hard racing Paris-Nice. It's one of the most important races in the spring for the Classement riders, and but I have a really good team, and they kept me out of all trouble.
Indeed they did, and this man gets second. He finished third last year, David Rebellin, and he kept that green jersey right throughout as well. And the winner of the King of the Mountains, a couple of good days towards the end, gave Aitor Osa the polka dot jersey, and that is no mean prize. First German to win the race though since Andreas Clauden a couple of years ago. Jörg Jatzke is the man on form, and not to say the least, so is his team. Just listen there to the voice of Daniel Manjas, the speaker of the Tour de France. We'll see a lot of him too as the year goes on. Stay with us throughout the 2004 season. But until the next time, for Paul Sherwen, I'm Phil Liggett saying goodbye.